Chapter 10:15. Wait, just now Teacher Mary Jane said that it was for children, right? Are you a child? Are you in the same generation as them? Are you their classmate? You have been repeating for 40 years, classmate. Hearing the woman's words, Jiang Hai waved his hand, looked at the woman with a smile, and said unhappily. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Taraga and the others couldn't help but want to laugh, and the woman's face turned blue because of Jiang Hai's words. She may have rarely heard such words. What kind of manners are you? Maybe she knew that there was indeed a problem with her interruption just now. The woman raised her head and said with a proud face. Really, what kind of manners are you? You don't have any manners, you can continue. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also said disdainfully and then said to the others. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the woman's face became more ugly. After being beaten up by Jiang Hai, these people looked at each other and didn't know what to say. But a few days ago, George Eddy found Bessie and said that he fell in love with her at first sight. He wanted to pursue her, but at that time I asked her to help me pick tea leaves. Bessie knew that only girls who had never made friends with the opposite sex could help you pick tea leaves, so when she came back, she rejected him. But he didn't give up. When we were having lunch today, he came over to confess his love again. Later, Horace Clark and these girls came to the toilet to block us. We were in the middle of a fight when this guy came over and took sides. I couldn't stand it, so I beat him up too. Seeing that the scene suddenly became quiet, Taraga stood up and told Jiang Hai the situation. It's obvious that she seduced George. How did it become that George likes her? George and I are very close. Hearing Taraga's words, Horace Clark also said loudly, but just after she finished speaking, Jiang Hai waved his hand. I don't care who this Xiaobai likes, he likes whoever he likes, it has nothing to do with me. Did you block them? Who started it? Looking at these people, Jiang Hai said with a serious face. Sure enough, after hearing Jiang Hai's words, these people stopped talking. There are a total of 7 people in Horace Clark's group over there, plus George Eddy who tried to stop them. There are 8 of them, and Taraga's group has a total of 3 people. 3 people dare to fight against 8 people? No one is stupid. How can this be unrelated? George, tell me, did she seduce you? Hearing that Jiang Hai wanted to settle this matter so quickly, several girls couldn't stand it anymore. Horace Clark pulled the sleeve of George Eddy next to her and said loudly. George Eddy dodged a little, thought for a while, looked at Beishi again and then nodded vigorously. You see, George said that she seduced him, what else do you have to say now? Seeing George Eddy nodding, Horace Clark also seemed to have won a victory and said loudly. Are you crazy? Little girl? You didn't understand what I said just now. Even if it was Bessie who seduced this guy named George of yours, does that mean you can hit her? You've got your priorities wrong. Glancing at Horace Clark with a smile, Jiang Hai said with a smile. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Horace Clark couldn't help but be speechless. Now it's my daughter who was beaten up. Look at this delicate little face, what is it now? My daughter is going to participate in a beauty contest. She has a bright future. If you beat her now, the United States may lose a big star, an excellent singer, and a supermodel in the future. Seeing that his daughter was speechless, her father couldn't help but stand up. There was no way. He knew that his wife was good at pestering, but she might not be the opponent of the man in front of her. So he had to stand up and explain. However, his superior words made Jiang Hai smile. Hey, you're really shameless. Okay, I beat your daughter, right? Okay, tell me, do you want to go to the judicial system or what? Looking at this guy, Jiang Hai said calmly, then signaled Taraga and the others not to worry. Humph, letting them go to jail like this is too easy for them. Pay up. Seeing Jiang Hai say this, he thought that Jiang Hai gave in and said proudly. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also nodded. Okay, how much do you want? Looking at this man, Jiang Hai said with a serious face. 100,000. After thinking about it, this man also opened his mouth and directly called out a number. Okay. Originally, he thought that he would ask for a sky-high price, but he didn't expect Jiang Hai to answer so straightforwardly. Seeing this, the man's wife couldn't help but gently pull his sleeve. Cough, I'm talking about medical expenses and mental damage compensation, also 100,000. Seeing his wife pulling his sleeve, the man immediately changed his words and said with a serious face. 100,000 became 200,000. No problem, by the way, what do you do for a living? Hearing 200,000, Jiang Hai also nodded, no problem. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, several people here were a little moved, and the parents of the girls who were beaten were also a little moved. I'm an actuary supervisor. Hearing Jiang Hai ask about his job, the man said proudly. Okay, you want 200,000, okay, I'll give it to you. An actuary's annual income is about $90,000. Since you're a supervisor, I'll double it for you. 180,000, let's call it 200,000. I'll give you 200,000 now, equivalent to your annual income. Jiang Hai looked at this man and nodded. He directly took out a checkbook, wrote a check for $200,000 and handed it over. The man didn't hesitate and directly took it, then looked at his wife and daughter proudly. The parents of the other girls were now a little hesitant to stand up, but before they could stand up, Jiang Hai had already continued. I don't believe that when Taraga beat your child didn't fight back. Now my child is dizzy and can't raise her hand. This is a concussion. There's nothing to say. Your family's matter is settled. Now pay the money. Looking at the man in front of him, Jiang Hai said very calmly. As he spoke, he motioned for Taraga to do as he said. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, Taraga directly sat on the chair over there, rubbing his head and complaining that he was dizzy. As soon as they saw Taraga do this, the parents who wanted money instantly stopped and looked at the current situation. You scoundrel, you still want money? Hearing Jiang Hai directly take back the chess piece, the person who was very proud of himself couldn't help but tremble, and then he looked at Jiang Hai with a face of surprise. Jiang Hai sneered. Was his money so easy to take? Of course I want money. The children fought and hurt each other, and it was your child who started it first. I paid for your medical expenses, so you have to pay me back. We have to be reasonable, right? Otherwise, I'll go to the judicial system and let your girl stay in jail for a few years. Looking at this person, Jiang Hai said very calmly. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the person couldn't help but be speechless. He couldn't really let his girl go to jail, could he? Fine, you win. He took out the check of $200,000 that he originally put in his pocket. He really was a little reluctant, but he knew that now wasn't the time to hesitate, so he directly threw it on the ground in front of Jiang Hai. Wait, this isn't enough. I like to be reasonable. I paid you a year's worth of income and you took the money. Now you have to pay me a year's worth of income and we're even. However, Jiang Hai didn't have the leisure to pick up $200,000. He smiled and said slowly. Was this matter so easy to solve? He was thinking too much. What do you do for a living? How much do you want? Hearing Jiang Hai say that $200,000 wasn't enough, the person's heart skipped a beat. Then he raised his head and said angrily, I'm a farmer and cattle breeder. I have a manor in Winthrop, the Soaring Dragon Manor. I think a lot of people here know that I have this manor. You can go to the tax bureau to check. I didn't make a lot of money last year, $7 billion. I'm talking about dollars. Today you take out $7 billion and slap it on the table and we'll call it quits. If you can't, I'll sue your girl and make her go to jail. Believe me, I can take out $100 million to do this. I've done it before. Looking at the person's anger, Jiang Hai stood up with a chuckle. The more he spoke, the brighter his face became. When Jiang Hai finished, the face of the family in front of him was quite good. It was hard to find someone with such a pale face. The guy's daughter burst into tears. She was in high school and she wasn't stupid. She knew what $7 billion meant. If what Jiang Hai said was true, she would really go to jail. Once she came out, her life would be ruined. The woman on the other side also looked at Jiang Hai in surprise, trembling all over. As for the man, he didn't know what to say. Now his mind was blank and he didn't know what to do at all. Do any of you want to pay compensation? Seeing that the family was about to go crazy from fear, Jiang Hai turned his head and looked at the other people in the distance and said indifferently. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, these people smiled awkwardly, especially those who were greedy just now. Now they were laughing very happily. This really saved them from being ruined. If no one wants to pay compensation, then we'll go. Alright, remember, get 7 billion ready or wait for the court summons. Seeing that these people were so obedient, Jiang Hai didn't say anything. He stood up and chuckled. Chapter 10:16. Mr. Jiang, please wait a moment. Just as Jiang Hai was about to leave the school with Taraga, teacher Mary Jane walked out from behind. Seeing Jiang Hai stop, she couldn't help but smile. Mr. Jiang, I wonder if you are dissatisfied with our school? Seeing Jiang Hai stop, Mary Jane looked at Jiang Hai and said very seriously. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai scratched his head. Where did this come from? No, I'm quite satisfied with your school. Although something like this happened today, to be honest, Jiang Hai still appreciated the actions of this high school. After all, school violence was inevitable and existed everywhere. Jiang Hai was also bullied when he was in school and robbed of money. At first he would fight with the robbers, but later he realized that he couldn't beat them, so he chickened out. Not only the senior students, but there were also bad guys in his class. They said they were borrowing money, but in fact they were robbing money. It was useless to tell this to the teacher or parents. If he told the teacher would at most come and give him a scolding. It wouldn't hurt or itch. Even if he went to his parents, it would be useless. If this kind of person could be controlled by his parents, then he wouldn't do this. As long as he had some family education, such a thing wouldn't happen. At that time, the school would at most issue a notice of criticism, stay in school for investigation, and so on. Basically, it was useless. Basically, the biggest possibility was that he would be expelled. However, these students had no choice but to study. It would be better if they were expelled. At that time, they would still come to the school every day. You can control the school inside, but can you control the outside? These people were all minors, who could do anything. And if you called the police, then you should prepare to transfer schools, because you would be isolated by the teachers and classmates in school. Because if you made a big deal out of it, it would be a disgrace to the school and a slap to the teacher's face. In the teacher's view, it didn't matter if you were bullied. This was called an internal conflict. If you called the police, then it would be a big deal. It was precisely because of the education problem in China that school violence was much more common in China. At most, it would be reduced to a small matter, and a small matter would be ignored. This was the reality. Of course, Jiang Hai didn't say that school violence didn't exist in the United States. Naturally, it existed in the United States, but because the management was quite strict, it was easier to control the incidents, especially for some college students and adult high school students. They could really go to jail, just like the popular abuse case in California a few years ago. The person who just watched from the side and handed a pair of scissors was sentenced to 6 years. The main culprit was directly sentenced to 13 years. In China, the saying "he was just a child" did not apply in the United States, especially in high schools and universities. If two male students fought one-on-one, there might not be any problems because they wouldn't talk about it. It was also embarrassing if they lost. But as long as it was a gang fight or a siege, the American police would never be soft-hearted when arresting people. Therefore, Jiang Hai was quite assured that Taraga would go to school here. Moreover, the situation in this school was better. Originally, this school had some reputation in the Boston area. No, it could be said that it was in the Massachusetts area. The teaching quality was quite good. Although it couldn't be compared to some private schools, after all, the main students in this school were Winthrop residents. Originally, the school was a bit shabby, but there weren't many troublemakers. The admission rate every year was quite good. Maybe because it was in the Boston area, there were many people who were admitted to Harvard, Boston University, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and other high-level universities in Winthrop High. The learning atmosphere was quite good. In the United States, it was basically the same as the current primary and junior high schools in China. It was divided into districts, but in the United States, it was very open. Even if you rented a house nearby, you could still go to school here. Originally, Winthrop High School's teaching quality was good, but the facilities were too poor, so parents were not willing to send their children to suffer here. But since Jiang Hai started to donate money and pay taxes, this school also received a lot of money. Last year alone, the town hall gave them $2 million to support education. Jiang Hai also donated a new library and a new stadium, and the entire school was reorganized. In the summer of last year, Winthrop High School became the best public high school in Massachusetts in one fell swoop. It may be worse than some of the private high schools of the aristocracy. But among the public high schools, it was definitely the best. Therefore, the people who came to school were not only people from Winthrop, but also people who lived in the Boston area would send their children to school. The family just now should be from Boston. Otherwise, they would have recognized Jiang Hai. It's class time now. Miss Taraga isn't going to class. Where are you taking her? Looking at Jiang Hai, Mary Jane said with a smile. She knew that Jiang Hai was a big customer of the school and could not be offended. Oh, then you go to class first. Originally, Jiang Hai thought that after this incident, Taraga should not be allowed to go to class today. After all, when he fought with his classmates when he was young, his father would take him away directly after the fight. The tradition of the old Jiang family was that one would not be reprimanded for fighting. If one won, there would be a reward, and if one lost, they would go back to practice hard. Jiang Hai was like this when he was young. Okay. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Taraga also nodded, then walked towards the classroom. Mr. Jiang, I know you like Miss Taraga very much, but she may have some problems. Seeing Taraga's figure disappear, Mary Jane could not help but turn her head and say to Jiang Hai, just because of the fight? Hearing her words, Jiang Hai frowned. If she asked him to stay here just to talk about this, then he would have to reevaluate this school. It's not right to scold him for fighting on both sides. Of course not. Haven't you already dealt with the fight? I'm talking about Miss Taraga's inner problems. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Mary Jane also said briskly, and then looked at Jiang Hai calmly. Inner problems? Hearing her words, Jiang Hai frowned. It's good that it's not about the fight, but what's wrong with her inner problems? Miss Taraga is a little too antisocial. She never participates in any class activities, parties, or clubs in the school. She only lives in her own small circle every day. When she came to school I found this problem but because I saw that she made 2 friends but now she's still like this. Thinking about Taraga's problem, Mary Jane said with a helpless face. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was also stunned. Is it wrong? Hearing what she said, Jiang Hai asked very seriously. God knows how much effort his parents spent to make him become such a person when he was in high school. He cannot make friends but he must go home after school. Playing basketball and playing on the computer will affect his studies and will become bad. If he participates in class activities he will have to spend money. It's best if he doesn't participate. It saves a lot of money at home. Although Jiang Hai didn't educate Taraga in this way, to be honest, he didn't think there was anything wrong with this. Of course that's not right. Children have to have a child's side. They have to be lively, sunny, and know how to communicate with others. In the future, when they go to college or enter society, they naturally need to talk with others, not be a yes man. They have to have their own independent thoughts. You can't let her practice these things after she enters society. She has to have a certain amount of contact when she's in school. Hearing Jiang Hai's matter-of-fact words, Mary Jane was stunned and said with a serious face. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai smacked his teeth. The education methods of the United States and Wuxia are completely different. Jiang Hai was a little embarrassed, but his sixth sense told him that he was in the United States now, so he should listen to the other party. What should I do? However, on the surface of embarrassment, Jiang Hai quickly pressed it down and asked Teacher Mary Jane seriously. You should think of a way to have a heart-to-heart talk with her or cultivate her self-confidence. The reason why she's like this now is very likely because she has just come into contact with this society. You should let her see more things and cultivate her to walk out of the small circle in her heart. Seeing that although Jiang Hai didn't understand, he was still willing to ask her how to do it, Mary Jane also sighed. She told Jiang Hai the method. As for how Jiang Hai would do it, she didn't know. Cultivate self-confidence. I know this. Hearing what she said, Jiang Hai thought for a moment. Cultivate self-confidence. Well, he couldn't help but think of a group of people in his mind. If he wants to cultivate self-confidence, this method may be the best. After talking with Teacher Mary Jane for a while, Jiang Hai walked to his car, then picked up his phone and dialed a number. Not long after, a bright voice came from the other end of the phone. Hey, why did you think of calling me? It's really strange that you would take the initiative to contact me. Listening to the voice on the other side of the phone, Jiang Hai also smiled. The owner of this voice has a close relationship with him. Stop talking nonsense. I didn't call you the night before yesterday. Listening to the voice on the phone, Jiang Hai said very indifferently. Hearing what Jiang Hai said, the person on the other side also chuckled. Well, you haven't called me for 37 hours. Well, tell me what's the matter. I'm still practicing my dance. You won't call me at this time. Hearing what Jiang Hai said, the person on the other side also laughed and said. Chapter 10:17. Jiang, where are we going? Sitting in the passenger seat of Jiang Hai's battle shield, Taraga asked with some confusion. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also smiled. He looked at her sitting next to him and said, To New York. I'll take you out to play. What's so fun about New York? Haven't we been there many times? Although Jiang Hai was usually a homebody, he occasionally wanted to go out to play. He was tired of Boston, so he naturally went to New York many times. Even if it wasn't 30 times, it was at least 25 times. It's different this time. It's mainly to take you there. Okay, don't ask. You'll know when we get there. Jiang Hai said with a smile as he casually messed up Taraga's hair. Then he sped up and rushed to New York. Ever since Teacher Mary Jane and Jiang Hai said that Taraga was a little self-abased, a little unconfident, and a little insecure, Jiang Hai also thought about it. This was indeed a problem. Although such a child was very popular with parents in China, it was not a good thing to have no personality, low self-esteem, and strong aggressiveness in the United States. However, when it came to developing self-confidence, to be honest, Jiang Hai himself couldn't do it. It was said that aristocrats had to be rich for more than 3 generations to be called aristocrats, because the aura of aristocracy couldn't be imitated by ordinary people. Jiang Hai was not an aristocrat. Strictly speaking, he was a homebody nouveau riche. The things he considered were still the thoughts of a small farmer and his private thoughts. He didn't have much of a view of the overall situation. The only thing he thought about was how to live comfortably and how to be happy. He didn't think about things like the country, the regime, the nation, and the human race at all. Although he made $7 billion a year, his current thoughts were the same as those of a worker who made $70,000 a year. He didn't care about race, righteousness, or any other nonsense. He just wanted to buy whatever he wanted and eat whatever he wanted. Of course, this was also quite in line with the position of an otaku. He didn't care about race or righteousness at all. This was also the reason why he didn't go public, save his money in the bank, invest in a company, go to other places to buy land, play in real estate, and make friends with the rich and powerful. It was because he didn't want to go this way at all. Worrying about the country and the people had nothing to do with him. He didn't have such great sentiments, so naturally he didn't have such great ideas. Jiang Hai himself was a loser. You couldn't expect him to teach Turaga to have a confident, noble temperament. Therefore he specially found a teacher for Turaga. The car drove very fast on the highway. After a few hours they left Massachusetts. The outline of the world's largest city, New York, gradually appeared in the distance. Compared with the narrowness of Boston, New York, at least on the surface, looked a lot more magnificent. As the highway drove into the city of New York, the original speed gradually slowed down. New York, the world's largest city, naturally had its gorgeous side. The traffic flow was quite large, which was also one of the characteristics of this place. The car kept moving, but the speed just couldn't keep up. Even if it was 10 o'clock on Saturday, no one went to work and there was no work. These were the people who came out to play. After entering the city, Jiang Hai drove for almost an hour before he arrived at the agreed place. The car just stopped and he saw a girl wearing a baseball cap trotting over in the distance. Looking at her, Jiang Hai also signaled Turaga to get out of the car with his eyes, and he opened the door and walked in. "Jiang, you're finally here." The petite girl jumped into Jiang Hai's arms and gave him a French kiss without saying anything. Although this was the extremely open United States, this also attracted a lot of attention. Okay, come down." Patting the butt of the short girl in front of him, Jiang Hai said with a smile. Hearing what Jiang Hai said, the girl also jumped down. At most, she was a little more than 1.6 meters tall. Next to Jiang Hai, she was really petite. At the same time, she was also curiously looking at Turaga, who came with Jiang Hai. "This must be Turaga." "Hello, I'm Selena Gomez. Nice to meet you." After seeing Turaga, the girl greeted him with a smile and shook hands with Turaga. After Turaga saw this person clearly, he couldn't help but be a little surprised. Selena Gomez may not have any reputation in China. The people who know her only know about her and Justin Bieber. After all, Justin Bieber talked about these things every day. However, in the entertainment industry of the United States, she is definitely a small star at the level of an A-list star. She had debuted in television dramas. Later, when she moved to the big screen, she had also been singing. Although she did not win any major awards like the Grammys or the Oscars, she had won countless small awards, especially the Teen Choice Awards. It was not an exaggeration to say that she had swept through them every year. Her main audience is junior high school students, and college students. After entering society, they may not have any feelings for her. Turaga is a high school student. Even if she doesn't chase stars, she knows there is such a person. But she never knew that this guy had an affair with Jiang Hai. To be exact, it may be more than an affair. "Hello, nice to meet you." Hearing Selena Gomez's words, Turaga also said with some embarrassment, "Let's go and eat first. I know a very good Italian restaurant." Looking at her timid look, Selena Gomez couldn't help laughing, and then led Jiang Hai and the others to the distance. "Let's go." Looking at the silly Tarag, Jiang Hai couldn't help but smile. Then he led Tarag to the front. Turning left and right, not long after, Jiang Hai and the others came to an Italian restaurant. This restaurant wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. The most important thing was that each seat had a small partition. This way it wouldn't affect other people and it could also protect privacy. Obviously, many people who didn't want others to know would come here to eat. Selena Gomez is obviously a regular here. After walking in, a waiter took her and Jiang Hai to a table by the window, but you can't see inside from outside the window. After sitting down, Jiang Hai also looked at the menu. When it comes to Italian cuisine, the first thing that comes to mind is pizza, then pasta. Indeed, speaking of Italian cuisine, it really doesn't give people much impression, but in fact, the mother of Western cuisine is Italian cuisine, not French cuisine. Many French dishes are transplanted from Italian cuisine. After all, don't forget that the predecessor of Italy was the Roman Empire. This guy ruled a lot of Europe. Therefore, Italian roast beef slices, seafood, meat plates and so on in the Western world are not worse than French cuisine. Jiang Hai and the others came here to eat Italian cuisine. Naturally, it is impossible for them to eat pizza or cheese. For these female stars, cheese is a huge burden, so their staple food is pasta, spaghetti made with meat sauce, plus steak, barbecue plate, salad and so on. It is also a rich meal, at least Jiang Hai likes to eat it. Americans don't like to talk about things while eating, so they just eat. After the meal they eat dessert, which is the famous Italian tiramisu, and then they start to chat. Jiang also told me about your situation. Let's go for a walk in the afternoon. Looking at Taraga, Selena Gomez said to her with a smile. But after hearing her words, Taraga looked at Jiang Hai. She doesn't know whether this is reliable or not. Jiang Hai shrugged at her. When it comes to cultivating self-confidence, he still believes in Selena Gomez. Who is Selena Gomez? She is an artist. No matter what kind of actor or actress, it is very important to cultivate self-confidence. For example, when acting, if you are acting as a daughter of a rich family or a rich person, you have to act like that. It is not like in China, where you can attract a lot of fans even if you don't have any expression. This is not possible in the United States. At least there are very few people who can completely rely on their face to make a living. Can you tell me what you want to do? Under Taraga's gaze, Jiang Hai is ready to explore her bottom line. Do you know how to improve a man's self-confidence? Looking at Jiang Hai, Selena Gomez asked him with a smile. I don't know. After thinking about it, Jiang Hai himself is not a very confident person, so he shook his head. Power, status, fame, money, women, these things can improve a man's self-confidence and make him the focus of the attention. You are also a successful person, you don't know? Looking at Jiang Hai shaking his head, Selena Gomez can't help but smile. She likes Jiang Hai's silly feeling because she thinks he is really cute. Okay. After thinking about it carefully, Selena Gomez is actually right. How can a man be confident? It is to make others envious and jealous. High position, holding great power, money and beautiful women. If all these are in the hands of a man, then this man will indeed be quite confident. Although Jiang Hai is not a person who is born to be confident, his words are indeed more firm now than a few years ago. A few years ago, not to mention a person representing a country, even a section chief can suppress him to smile. But now, a country's representative has to look at his face to buy meat and grass. Thinking about it this way, it is indeed a reflection of self-confidence. Seeing Jiang Hai nod in agreement, Selena Gomez looked at Taraga again. Chapter 10:18. Then how do you make a girl confident? Selena Gomez continued to ask while looking at Taraga. Money, power, status, fame, men? Taraga said with some confusion when she heard Selena Gomez's words. She really didn't know much about these things. Selena Gomez also laughed when she heard her words. You're so despicable. You're right, but you're also wrong. As the old saying goes, knowledge is fate, and knowledge is to serve money. Money is indeed the foundation. As for power, status and fame, I can't teach you these. Maybe Prawalton can. As for men, at least it's not something you need to consider right now, Selena Gomez said with a smile as she looked at Taraga. Money, I have money? Taraga said hesitantly after thinking for a moment. Indeed, she was a little rich woman. The money that Jiang Hai usually gave her, including the money that Jiang Hai gave her after they found the gold. Taraga now had at least $2 million in her bank card. In fact, it wasn't just her. Every woman around Jiang Hai had at least money in their bank cards. Apart from Prawalton, Selena Gomez, and Chi Li, the ones with the most money were Chi Jia and Chia. The two of them had shares of the Chi Group and shares of Jiang Hai's Tinglong Company. Their net worth was at least $1 billion. In terms of cash alone, there was almost $10 million in their bank cards. Feng Yunshin and Ai Xiaoxi definitely had a lot of money too. Feng Yunshin had more than $5 million, and Ai Xiaoxi had at least $4 million. Azalina and the others all had shares of the Tinglong Company and money from Jiang Hai. Their net worth was at least hundreds of millions. At the same time, they had no less than $6 or $7 million in cash, and at least $3 or $4 million. Among them, the ones with less cash were probably Valentina and the others who stayed in the company. After all, they came into contact with society and usually bought more things. People like Azalina and Galina were purely saving money. Jiang Hai naturally wouldn't treat Aphrodite and the others badly. Although they didn't have any shares, having 3 or 4 million yuan wasn't a problem. Moreover, they didn't have anywhere to spend it. At most, they could only buy some makeup products and new clothes. Delina and Marian were Jiang Hai's daughters in name, so naturally they wouldn't be short of money. They had about $10 million in cash. Jiang Hai often gave them $200,000 or $300,000 to buy clothes and jewelry. But basically they didn't buy jewelry and the clothes were cheap, so they basically saved the money. The money. Taraga actually didn't have much money here. It was her fault for coming so late. It could be said that if the women in Jiang Hai's manor pooled their money together, it wouldn't be a problem for them to come up with $100 million in cash. This was just their pocket money, so they really didn't lack money. As for Prawalton, Selena Gomez and Chili, needless to say, Chili and Prawalton were businessmen. Although they weren't as rich as Jiang Hai, they were definitely quite rich. Selena Gomez, being a star in the United States, was indeed more profitable, but it was also more tiring. Since she had a relationship with Jiang Hai, then Jiang Hai wouldn't let her be too tired. Although Jiang Hai wasn't a good person, he was still good to his women. Although he didn't directly give Selena Gomez money, he also had other ways. For example, Selena Gomez also released 2 CDs 2 years ago. He also bought 1 million CDs. Each CD was about $8, which was 16 million. Then he gave these CDs to the poor for free. After tax and the distribution company's share of the 16 million, Selena Gomez would have about 5 million left in her hands. So after knowing that Jiang Hai supported her, Selena Gomez was also very considerate to Jiang Hai. At the same time, she didn't lack money. This could be seen from the fact that she didn't release any CDs last year, and the frequency of her concerts was quite low. Hearing Taraga's words, Selena Gomez smiled and said seriously, "If the money is in the bank, then the money is not yours but the bank's, so the first step for us to develop confidence is to spend money." Spend money? Hearing what she said, Taraga couldn't help but hesitate because she was a little reluctant to spend money. "Okay, have you finished eating? Let's go." Seeing that Taraga was still a little confused, Selena Gomez also smiled, and then the three of them left the restaurant together. Of course, the money for the meal and the tip were indispensable. After getting in the car, Jiang Hai and the others went directly to Fifth Avenue. Under the command of Selena Gomez, they stopped in front of a Versace brand store. Then she turned her head and looked at Taraga behind her. "This is a Bluetooth headset. After you put it on, I will tell you what to do." Looking at Taraga with a smile, Selena Gomez said, and Taraga was stunned when he heard what she said. "You want me to go down by myself?" Looking at Selena Gomez in disbelief, Taraga looked at Jiang Hai for help until she nodded. However, Jiang Hai said that Selena Gomez was in charge of today's matters, so he could only express that he had no choice. Looking at the appearance of these two, Taraga sighed helplessly, then slowly opened the door and walked out. Seeing her action, Selena Gomez smiled and waved her hand, then rolled up the window again. "I miss it so much." Just as Taraga slowly moved toward the Versace store, Selena Gomez had already rushed to Jiang Hai's body. After whispering, she quickly untied Jiang Hai's pants. "Hey, we are on the street now." Looking at the anxious girl beside him, Jiang Hai was also a little flustered. "What are you afraid of? I am a public figure, I don't care. You just stay here." Rolling her eyes at Jiang Hai, Selena Gomez lowered her head. Jiang Hai also licked his lips, relaxed his body, and looked at the people passing by outside the window. "Miss, is there anything I can do for you?" At this time, Taraga, who was outside, finally walked to the door of the store. The waiter of the store, although looking at Taraga's civilian clothes, did not drive her away. Instead, he opened the door and asked her. In fact, in the eyes of these people, Taraga was not a potential customer. That I. Listening to this person's words, Taraga said with some hesitation. She really didn't know what to say. She just glanced at the things in this store and they were really expensive. "Tell her to take out your new spring collection." Although she was busy, Selena Gomez did not forget her duty and spoke to Taraga through the Bluetooth headset. I am here to buy things. Take out your new spring collection this year." Hearing Selena Gomez's words, Taraga also had some confidence. Although she still stuttered, she still spoke to the person in front of her. Okay, this way please." Hearing what Taraga said, the waiter here couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, but her good professionalism still made her lead Taraga into the store in doubt. Then she signaled a few waiters to come over and take out this year's new women's clothing. Looking at these things in front of her, Taraga was a little confused. "Try them one by one. Unless you hate a certain style very much, try them all." Listening to the voice in the headset, Selena Gomez also said a sentence. After hearing her words, Taraga was also desperate. She braced herself, gritted her teeth, and walked into the fitting room. At this time, Selena Gomez outside was no longer satisfied with just swallowing and vomiting. She pulled the tab under Jiang Hai's chair and moved Jiang Hai's chair to the largest position. At the same time she laid down. Then she directly crossed the middle partition and came to Jiang Hai's side. I can't stand it, hurry up. When Jiang Hai finally couldn't stand it and ended, Taraga on the other side had also finished trying all the clothes she saw. Half an hour had passed unknowingly, and Taraga didn't know what to do next. Say, wrap up all the clothes I have tried and then take out the bank card. Listening to Taraga's request for help, although Selena Gomez was tired and panting, she still told her what to say very calmly. Taraga also did as she said. When Taraga's voice fell, the good attitude of the originally good waitresses increased by another octave. She didn't buy shoes because she was used to wearing sneakers, but she bought a few bags because she had seen them in school before. Those girls would have some handbags. Anyway, she spent money, so she didn't care how much she spent. Moreover, Jiang Hai said that the things she bought today were all his, and he would reimburse her. She didn't buy shoes because she was used to wearing sneakers, but she bought a few bags because she had seen them in school before. Those girls would have some handbags. Anyway, she spent money, so she didn't care how much she spent. Besides, Jiang Hai said that the things she bought today were all his and he would reimburse her. After walking around, the waitresses behind Taraga walked out of Versace with more than 20 bags. Chapter 10:19. How was it? Did it feel good? Seeing her come back, Selena Gomez smiled and opened the car door. She helped her throw the clothes and bags into the car and then asked her, it's okay, but these things cost more than 300,000. After hearing Selena Gomez's words, Tarag hesitated for a moment and said with some hesitation. She was now thinking about how much beef and ordinary clothes they would need to buy for $300,000. How long would it be enough for their tribe to survive? TSK, these rich people were really wasting resources. Hey, this is nothing. Let's continue. Let's go to Estée Lauder over there. Hearing her words, Selena Gomez couldn't help but laugh. Then she proudly pulled her and walked away. She wouldn't let Taraga get in the car because the smell in the car hadn't dissipated yet. She was a very careful girl. The appearance of a successful woman was composed of several parts. Beautiful clothes, perfect jewelry, exquisite makeup, and a beautiful hairstyle. These were the standard equipment of a confident woman. Now that there were clothes, Selena Gomez was ready to prepare other things for Taraga. Makeup was a very important point. If it was makeup products, many people who had some understanding of luxury makeup products would say that since Jiang Hai didn't lack money, why didn't he buy the legendary Chanel No. 5? Chanel No. 5 had a great reputation in the world. As for what kind of reputation it had, Jiang Hai didn't explain it here. There was nothing much to say. Just find an encyclopedia and there would be a detailed explanation. But those who had really been to the United States would know that although Chanel's makeup products and perfume had a certain sales volume in the United States, the real #1 luxury brand in the United States was Estée Lauder. This brand was originally an American brand. Although the United States wouldn't be like Japan and South Korea, where the quality of their products was the same, they would naturally support their own brands. The products sold by Estée Lauder in the United States weren't worse than Chanel. Moreover, they had more benefits and discounts. Therefore, in the upper class of the United States, many people liked to buy Estée Lauder's makeup products. Now, Selena Gomez took Taraga to a nearby Estée Lauder. After about 2 hours they came out. According to Selena Gomez, they tried a total of 3 types of makeup. Taraga was obviously more suitable for fruit makeup. After putting on foundation, drawing eyebrow lines and brushing eyelashes, Taraga looked more beautiful than before. However, Jiang Hai didn't care too much about it. After choosing the makeup products, it was time to buy jewelry. For example, these people weren't too picky about the materials. Because at that price the materials must be the best. They were more interested in the brands such as Cartier, Tiffany, and Bulgari. These were the top 3 brands. The same things were sold here were much more expensive. For example, a diamond bracelet might be sold for $100,000 in some stores, but it would be sold for $10 million here. They were selling the brand and design. Jiang Hai didn't care about these things the most. However, the girls were very interested in these things. But Selena Gomez didn't take Taraga to these places. Instead, they went to Swarovski. At this time, some people would say that they had heard of this brand, but not many people knew about this brand. According to Selena Gomez, this brand's products were all fake. Yes, even if it was real Swarovski products, they were all fake. For example, the diamonds were all fake because they were selling fake products. Their original intention was to imitate crystal products. The most famous thing here was the rhinestones, which were artificial diamonds. They were quite cheap. At the same time, this wasn't a luxury brand, just an ordinary business. They sold designs, nothing more. Therefore, if a woman saw her boyfriend buying a Swarovski product for her, she would directly throw it at his face because it was similar to scolding him. Of course, it wasn't a problem to buy some small accessories such as some watches, pendants, and so on. Selena Gomez was only 25 years old this year. She was a girl in 1992. Although she was a little older than Taraga, she also knew what accessories girls at Taraga's age wanted. There was no need for things like diamond necklaces, rings, and so on. Instead, some small accessories on the belt, bracelets, and so on were enough to shine. Therefore, buying these things cost a total of $10,000. Then there was the most time-consuming thing, hair. Women were very particular about starting from scratch. When they moved to a new house, they had to change their hairstyle. When they changed their job, they had to change their hairstyle. When a relationship ended, they had to change their hairstyle. When something happened at home, they had to change their hairstyle. When they gave birth to a child, they had to change their hairstyle. They always had a reason to go to the hairdresser, so women really liked to do their hair. In Jiang Hai's opinion, there were a total of 4 hairstyles: short hair, braids, single ponytail, double ponytail, long hair, and curly hair. Yes, there were only these few hairstyles, but in the eyes of women, there might be thousands of hairstyles. It was difficult to understand. After buying these things, Selena Gomez directly took Jiang Hai and Taraga to a hairdresser where she specialized in styling. Well, it seemed to be called a styling studio now. Originally, Jiang Hai didn't want to go in, but Selena Gomez forced him to go in. After watching Selena Gomez talk with a sissy for a while, the sissy took Jiang Hai to wash his hair. After wiping it clean, he went behind Jiang Hai and unconsciously touched Jiang Hai's hair with his hands. "Oh dear, your hair is really good. I want to have hair like this, but unfortunately when I was young I permed my hair and damaged it. It's really annoying." As soon as this guy opened his mouth, Jiang Hai felt a chill from the bottom of his feet to his heart in an instant. "Just cut it shorter for me. Okay, it's neat. Also, don't talk anymore." Jiang Hai had this hairstyle since he was 5 years old. He had never cut or blow-dried his hair. He also never did anything unusual. He had always had the same hairstyle. This gets really boring. Then let's watch the music video. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, this sissy twitched his mouth and picked up his scissors. At the same time, he turned on a small TV beside him. Jiang Hai was also a cheap person. Cutting hair was very boring. So, he wanted to watch what was on the TV. When the music started, he could only say that it was okay. It was a Soviet-Russian song. Jiang Hai's family lived in Bing City, and since he was young, he had listened to Moscow's outskirts at night. He was not against Soviet-Russian songs. At the same time, the TV was showing a small wooden house in a snowy area. There was an introduction of the song. The song was called Zonhop. Well, Jiang Hai's English was really not good. What the hell is this? After watching for less than 20 seconds, Jiang Hai could not take it anymore. He felt like he was going to puke out his lungs. How can you say it's a ghost? It's really annoying. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the guy who cut his hair could not help but punch him. Then he winked at him. Jiang Hai really wanted to vomit now. "Turn it off for me and then change the haircut?" Rubbing his forehead, Jiang Hai swore that he would never let this guy touch his head again. It was too disgusting. There was no other way. A straight guy like him really could not bear this kind of thing. Sissy. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the sissy raised his head and left without saying anything. After a while, Selena Gomez came in with a punk. Fortunately, although this punk was quite cruel to himself, he still perfectly fulfilled Jiang Hai's requirements. Only Selena Gomez was there holding back her laughter. "Okay, what are you laughing at? What kind of place are you looking for?" Rolling his eyes at her, Jiang Hai said with a look of displeasure. Okay, Kevin is the best image designer here. You can't enjoy this blessing. Ah, by the way, don't leave tonight. I just received a call. Demi is having a party tonight. Let's go and join in the fun." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez said to Jiang Hai, "I don't like to go to parties." Hearing her words, Jiang Hai's brows wrinkled. What he said was the truth. He really didn't like to go there. He didn't like to go to places that were too loud. It would make his mind tense up and uncomfortable. It's a theme party. It won't be too noisy. Please don't tell me you don't even want to stay for one night. Looking at Jiang Hai, Selena Gomez put her hands together and looked at Jiang Hai with a pitiful face. Thinking about how he usually spent too little time with Selena Gomez, Jiang Hai could not refuse her. He could only nod helplessly, hoping that it would not be too noisy. Chapter 10:20. Yeah. Seeing that Jiang Hai agreed, Selena Gomez couldn't help but smile and wave her little fist. Let's do the hair here first, then go to eat and then go to my house. After sending Taraga back, I will change my clothes and we will go. Selena Gomez might really like parties. Seeing that Jiang Hai had agreed, she smiled and said, let's go. Looking at her, Jiang Hai always felt that he had fallen into a trap. After a while, Taraga appeared in front of Jiang Hai with her new hairstyle. Taraga's previous hairstyle was basically long black hair or a ponytail. In Jiang Hai's opinion, this was enough. But now, although it was still long black hair, it was not too straight. At the end of the hair, they made it look like an inside button. It really looked better, but Jiang Hai didn't know why. After designing Taraga's hairstyle, Jiang Hai, Selena Gomez, and Taraga went to have dinner together. Dinner was French food. Because Selena Gomez had been thinking about the party, she ate quickly. Then, because Taraga was still underage, Jiang Hai and Selena Gomez went back to Selena Gomez's villa in New York with her. After arranging a room for Taraga, they told her where the bathroom was, where the kitchen was, and there were many ready-to-eat things in the kitchen. If she was hungry, she could eat them directly. What was the Wi-Fi in the house, how to watch the TV? After everything was done, Selena Gomez pulled Jiang Hai into her room. Hurry up, take off your clothes. As soon as they entered the room, Selena Gomez took off her clothes directly. Didn't you say you were going to a party? What are you doing? Seeing that Selena Gomez quickly took off the clothes on her upper body, Jiang Hai couldn't help but look at her with some doubts. Do I have to do it again before leaving? Today is a themed party. Do you know that it's a costume party? Everyone has to dress up as the characters in the anime. While talking to Jiang Hai, Selena Gomez had already taken off all her clothes. She stood in front of her wardrobe naked. After opening the wardrobe, she saw that there was a special door inside that was filled with anime cosplay costumes. Looking at the wardrobe full of costumes, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be stunned. This is a bit too much. But I don't have those clothes. Let's forget about it. Seeing that she took out more than a dozen clothes at once and threw them on the bed, then began to pick them up, Jiang Hai used to be a pure otaku, so he naturally watched a lot of anime and movies. Now, many of the clothes on Selena Gomez's bed were from anime and movies such as Sailor Moon, Catgirl, Clown Girl, Wisteria Girl, and so on. Wonder Woman's costume looked too low now. In addition, there were some costumes from games such as Resident Evil, Chun-Li, and Ollie from LOL, which had been popular in recent years, and so on. There was a mess of everything. After she took them out, she kept gesturing there. And this is okay. There are clothes for people who don't have clothes to change into. You can choose after you go there. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez said with a smile while trying. Finally, she picked a bounty hunter Miss Misfortune's costume in LOL and put it on directly. To be honest, Selena Gomez was very seductive. Now that she was cosplaying, Jiang Hai couldn't help but get hard again to show his respect. How is it? Does it look good? While talking, Selena Gomez moved her exposed waist. It looks good, but it's too revealing. What if your belt falls off? Hearing Selena Gomez's words, Jiang Hai said with a serious face. If it was just when they were together, Jiang Hai would be very happy with her dressed like this, but he can't be the only man to go to a party, right? Letting others take advantage of her, even if it was just a look, Jiang Hai would be unhappy. TSK, you can even be jealous. What about this one? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, although Selena Gomez despised Jiang Hai, the smile on her face couldn't be hidden. When a man was jealous of a woman, it meant that the man cared about the woman. Therefore, Selena Gomez's heart was also sweet. So she took the initiative to change her clothes, and then picked up another set of clothes. It was still the set of clothes of the bounty hunter Miss Misfortune in LOL, but it was the set of clothes of the Empress. Although there was still a lot of skin above the cleavage, the other parts were more or less covered. It was more like a set of pirate clothes. Jiang Hai glanced at the other clothes. This set was relatively less revealing, so he nodded. Then Selena Gomez smiled and left with Jiang Hai. The two of them drove in New York City, turning left and right. Not long after, they arrived at a small street in Manhattan. Although the street was not wide, there were many luxury cars parked here at this time. This was the place where the female stars and socialites gathered. Originally, Jiang Hai also wanted to park here, but Selena Gomez didn't let him park here. This was because in some bars, naturally there were security guards to prevent reporters from entering, but outside there were no restrictions. So she still led Jiang Hai to the back door. After getting out of the car with Jiang Hai, they walked there. There were 8 big men standing at the back door. Naturally, they knew Selena Gomez. When they saw her coming, they nodded. Although they looked at Jiang Hai with some doubts, They didn't stop Selena Gomez from bringing him here. They followed behind Selena Gomez and Jiang Hai also walked in with her. Walking into the nightclub, Jiang Hai heard some music and some screams, but as Selena Gomez said, the music wasn't too loud. At least in this place, Jiang Hai could still reluctantly accept it. I'll take you to change your clothes. Hearing the music, Selena Gomez also swayed to the rhythm, but she didn't go directly. After saying something to Jiang Hai, she took Jiang Hai to a nearby room where they could change their clothes. When Jiang Hai walked in, he saw many sets of clothes hanging on the wall. There was also a wardrobe and some changing rooms next to it. Everyone had their own space and there was no need to distinguish between men and women. When Jiang Hai and Selena Gomez walked in, there were many people changing their clothes in the room. There were men and women and they were all dressed differently. When they felt someone push the door open, the people in the room also looked over. "Hi, Selena." Seeing the two people coming in, the people in the room smiled and said. One of the women trotted over and excitedly held Selena Gomez's hand. "The two of us really thought of the same thing. Look, I'm also a bounty hunter," the woman said to Selena Gomez while showing off her figure. But compared to Selena Gomez, who dressed more conservatively because of Jiang Hai's influence, she dressed much more wildly. Indeed, this skin was originally called Western Cowboy in the game. "Wow, you dare to show off your small waist? Don't you have thighs and heels? Aren't you afraid of being posted online?" Looking at this person, Selena Gomez also smiled and said to the woman. Hearing her words, the woman couldn't help but pout. "Who cares about that? By the way, who's this? I've never seen you before." At this time, she also saw Jiang Hai, who came in with Selena Gomez and couldn't help but ask with some doubts. "This is my boyfriend Jiang Hai, this is my friend Ashley Glynn," she played Twilight. Hearing her words, Selena Gomez couldn't help but smile and said, "Hi. Hello, my name is Ashley Glynn, you can call me Ashley." Hearing Selena Gomez's words, Ashley Glynn was a little surprised, then took the initiative to stretch out her hand and shook Jiang Hai's hand, but just as Jiang Hai was about to let go, she scratched Jiang Hai's palm, which was a little awkward. "Hey, what are you doing?" Seeing Ashley Glynn's action, Selena Gomez couldn't help but frown and say, Sorry, I'm used to it. You guys pick first, I'm going out." Hearing Selena Gomez's words, Ashley Glynn also laughed and then walked out of the room first, leaving Jiang Hai and Selena Gomez behind. It was really a little awkward. "I should have squeezed you dry before coming. I was so busy playing that I forgot there were so many little sluts here." Seeing that Ashley Glynn had left, Selena Gomez could not help but curl her lips as she whispered to Ashley Glynn. "Oh don't worry, I'm not such a casual person." Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but touch his nose awkwardly. What else can he say now? In fact, if she is willing to leave, Jiang Hai would like to go back and try to see what she likes to do when she wears those clothes, but obviously she won't leave so easily. "Forget it, I'll keep an eye on you in a while. Come on, pick something you like, let's go out and have fun." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez shook her head, then pulled Jiang Hai to the hanger next to her and picked up carefully. Jiang Hai also looked at these clothes and couldn't help but touch his chin. Won't it be shameful to wear these clothes? Chapter 10:21. To be honest, there are really a lot of clothes in front of Jiang Hai now, basically all kinds of models, all kinds of styles, everything. But he hasn't made up his mind on what to wear, his heart is really in a dilemma. The cosplay ball that Selena Gomez and the others were going to was naturally not as low class as the others. Although the costumes were not branded, the workmanship was probably better than that of the costumes at the Comic-Con. The United States is a country that likes to watch anime very much. For example, the most popular movie series in the world, Marvel movies, is based on American anime, and the sales of each issue has always been high in the United States. As everyone knows, there are two major animation giants in the United States, one is Marvel and the other is DC. Iron Man, Hulk, Captain America, Thor and so on belong to Marvel, and Superman, Batman, the Joker, the Flash and so on belong to DC. These characters can be regarded as the idols of Americans since childhood. But to be honest, it may be because of cultural differences. These tights that look very handsome in the United States, Jiang Hai can't accept them. They look very low class. At least from Jiang Hai's point of view, what Superman, what Batman and the like wearing those clothes, it was so humiliating. Fortunately, in addition to the anime in the United States, Japanese anime still has a large audience in the United States. No matter how good the domestic sales are in the United States, when it comes to Japanese anime, the first one is Dragon Ball. The influence and sales of Dragon Ball in the United States have always been the highest. It is far from being comparable to the current One Piece, Naruto, and Shinigami. So in front of Jiang Hai, in addition to the clothes from Marvel and DC, there are also some clothes from Dragon Ball. For example, Goku's martial arts suit, Vegeta's battle suit, and so on, but the battle suit is also very shameful. I'll wear this. After looking around and picking up a martial arts suit from Dragon Ball, Jiang Hai said to Selena Gomez, but after Selena Gomez looked at Jiang Hai, she shook her head. This won't do. It's too old-fashioned. You can try this. After hanging up the clothes in Jiang Hai's hands, Selena Gomez picked out a Superman suit for Jiang Hai. Although it wasn't the old one but the new one, Jiang Hai still shook his head like a rattle drum. What a joke, he didn't want to wear such a thing. Then there is really nothing to wear here. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez also rummaged for clothes. Just as she was rummaging, Jiang Hai suddenly saw a set of clothes. Wow, Selena is here. After a while, Jiang Hai and Selena Gomez slowly walked out of the room. However, with Selena Gomez in front and Jiang Hai behind, to be honest, he was still not used to it. Let's go. Looking at Jiang Hai, who had been following behind her, Selena Gomez also smiled and took the initiative to pull him out. As soon as Jiang Hai came out, he really attracted a lot of people, especially the attention of women. Jiang Hai's clothes were locked in the cabinet provided by the people here. At this time, Selena Gomez was still in the set of clothes she wore when she came, and Jiang Hai also changed into white trousers with a black belt. He wore a coat that exposed his chest like a cloak with red sleeves, a black cape, and a hat with bird feathers on his head. If someone familiar with One Piece was here, they would recognize this outfit. It was the outfit of the world's #1 swordsman in One Piece, Hawkeye Joraker Mihawk. Compared with those tights, Jiang Hai didn't care about exposing his chest. Jiang Hai was 196 meters and 115 kilograms, but he didn't look fat. What? It was because his muscles were extremely dense. Looking at Jiang Hai's exposed 10-pack abs as well as his full chest, mermaid belt, male dog waist, and the Kirin arms supporting his clothes, Jiang Hai attracted a lot of attention as soon as he came out. Who is the person beside Selena? Looking at Jiang Hai's figure, many women's eyes lit up. Some people had even asked about Jiang Hai's situation, and some people even took the initiative to come over. That's Jiang Hai, Selena's boyfriend. His body is really good, but unfortunately he is Asian. His size isn't very good. After hearing these people's words, Ashley Glynn, who Jiang Hai had just met, whispered in her small circle. Hearing her words, many women around her burst into laughter. I like Asians. They are more interesting and gentle than those guys. Don't you think it's fun to stuff that size into your mouth? At this time, another woman also whispered with a smile, causing these people to laugh again. Let's go. But at this time, Selena Gomez and Jiang Hai couldn't hear this. They came in, but the music didn't stop. She took Jiang Hai to a booth next to her and asked the waiter to bring some drinks. She sat there and talked with Jiang Hai. Of course, she also introduced the people outside. And Jiang Hai also found that his eyes were not enough. The people who would attend this event could be said to be rich and noble. Basically, they were all in the entertainment industry. No matter which country's entertainment industry it was, there were some requirements for appearance. So it can be said that the people who came here today were all handsome men and beautiful women, especially some female stars who were wearing quite skimpy clothes. Originally, Jiang Hai thought that dressing like Ashley Glynn just now was the limit, but then he found that he was thinking too much. The people here were really wearing all kinds of clothes. Some female stars even only wore underwear, fluffy, with a small tail behind, containing rabbits, cats, and little devils. Looking at this exciting scene, some parts of Jiang Hai's body couldn't help but harden shamefully, so he unnaturally put his legs together to block. However, his model was indeed a bit scary. It didn't block that well and his pants were a bit tight. Hey Selena, you're late. Just as Jiang Hai wanted to relax and take a deep breath, a fragrant wind suddenly came, and then a woman in a tight leather jacket came in from outside. Although this woman was wearing a tight leather jacket, the zipper on the front was pulled low enough. Almost all the balls were exposed except for 2 points. Are you faking it, Black Widow? Seeing this person come in, Selena Gomez didn't stand up but looked at her curiously. Seeing that Selena Gomez guessed right, this person also made a shooting gesture. Hey Jiang, this is Demi Lovato, my good friend. Today's lying down was also done by her. Demi, this is Jiang, my boyfriend. After a simple exchange, Selena Gomez introduced Jiang Hai. Oh, hello, my name is Jiang Hai. It's nice to meet you. Hearing Selena Gomez's words, Jiang Hai also stood up and took the initiative to shake her hand. Hello Mr. Jiang, nice to meet you too. I wonder if I can borrow Selena? There are many sisters waiting for her over there. After shaking hands with Jiang Hai, Demi Lovato said with a smile. Of course. With a nod, Jiang Hai made a gesture of invitation. Demi Lovato and Selena Gomez ran to a bar in the distance. At this time there were many girls gathered there. Seeing Selena Gomez coming over, they all laughed and chatted together. Jiang Hai also sat in place, drinking a drink while looking at the people outside. Just as he was looking here, Ashley Glynn, whom he met once, walked over with a smile. Hey handsome, aren't you going to dance? Leaning against the door frame of the booth, the woman said with a smile. I don't like noisy environments. Hearing the woman's words, Jiang Hai shook his head. He was telling the truth. Wow, there aren't many young people who don't like parties nowadays. Do you mind if I sit here for a while? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Ashley Glynn said with a smile. Go ahead. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also motioned her to do as she pleases. Although he didn't know the purpose of this woman coming here, Jiang Hai didn't say that it was inconvenient. After all, she is also a person in the entertainment industry and knows Selena Gomez. Mr. Jiang is from Wuxia, right? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, this person didn't hesitate and sat directly on the sofa here, and then asked Jiang Hai. Hearing what she said, Jiang Hai also nodded. This is easy to guess. Since there are only two names, he can't be an islander. From the time they met, Jiang Hai has never bowed, which can be ruled out as a South Korean, so he can only be from Wuxia. Ashley Glynn's brain is still very fast. I don't know where Mr. Jiang made his fortune. After confirming Jiang Hai's nationality, she continued to ask with a smile. Oh, I'm a cattle farmer. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also said indifferently. He was not wrong. He was a cattle farmer. In addition to cattle, he also raised fish. He said this everywhere, although it was a bit of pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Wow, this is a very stable career, isn't it? Is your farm in Montana or in California or Texas? Hearing that Jiang Hai was a cattle farmer, Ashley Glynn was stunned for a moment, and then asked with some doubts. Chapter 1022. Oh, they're not here, they're in the suburbs of Boston. Hearing this man's words, Jiang Hai also said indifferently. As soon as she heard Jiang Hai's words, Ashley Glynn's interest in Jiang Hai instantly changed from the original 60% to 5%, because in her opinion, a cattle ranch is naturally large. But if you want to occupy a large enough place, you need some empty mines in a large state. Montana, Texas, and Mexico are among the best places to raise cattle. One is vast and sparsely populated, the second is a large open grassland, and the third is basically the industry of all the major animal husbandry tycoons in the United States is here. The values of the Americans are not to laugh at the poor, nor are they the kind of people who have no bottom line to suck up to the rich. But in their hearts, the most important thing to measure a person is whether he has money. As long as the money comes from a legitimate source and is a stable income, they will welcome your existence. Of course, how much you earn also depends on your level, just like Ashley Glynn now doesn't think that Jiang Hai is at the same level as her. These stars are very knowledgeable. People like Ashley Glynn naturally know that if a manor wants to make money, it doesn't need to be big, and if it wants to be big, it has to be in the 3 states mentioned above. Boston is one of the first states in the United States. Naturally, she knew how small that place was. She didn't think that there would be a big manor there. If there wasn't a big manor, it meant that Jiang Hai didn't have much money. If he didn't have much money, it meant that Selena Gomez had found a poor man. Whether Selena Gomez really has feelings for him and found a poor man, she doesn't care, but at least she won't make friends with such a person, so after a few words she got up and left. Jiang Hai doesn't care about this. She doesn't want to leave. In fact, it doesn't have much to do with him. After she left, Selena Gomez came over with a smile. At least you are honest. Sitting next to Jiang Hai, Selena Gomez said happily. It seems that she also saw Ashley Glynn coming over just now. Otherwise she would not be so happy. She knows how chaotic the American entertainment industry is. Now that she is gone, it means that she did not get anything out of Jiang Hai. It seems that Jiang Hai is quite honest. Of course. Are there any rewards? Upon hearing Selena Gomez's words, Jiang Hai looked at her with a smile and asked. After hearing what Jiang Hai said, she pretended to think for a moment. Tell me, what kind of reward do you want? A pair of big eyes stared unblinkingly at Jiang Hai as she asked him. When we do that at night, can you change into a few more sets of clothes? Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also smiled and leaned over. He saw a lot of good clothes just now. Well, for the sake of you being so obedient today. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez also said with a smile. After the two played here for almost an hour, the two left. When they returned home, Taraga was already resting in his room. As for Jiang Hai and Selena Gomez, they naturally went back shamelessly. This night, the two basically didn't sleep. In this night, the two changed almost 7 or 8 sets of clothes and played until dawn. The next morning, Selena Gomez couldn't stand it anymore and fell into a deep sleep. Jiang Hai was also afraid that she would hurt her body, but he really couldn't control himself last night, so before leaving he deliberately injected aura into her body to strengthen her physical fitness. After that, he took Taraga to have breakfast and bought a set of food for Selena Gomez. After that, he went back to the manor with Taraga. After returning to the manor, looking at the new Taraga, the girls in Jiang Hai's manor were all asking. There was no woman who didn't like to be beautiful. Usually everyone was the same, so it didn't matter. Now that Taraga had changed, they were also a little moved, especially Delina and Marion. One must know that the three of them often played together before. On the other hand, Tarag was quite generous. She bought clothes, makeup products, and the hairstyle that was specially designed for her in the dressing room. She also exchanged ideas with the two girls. However, what was suitable for her might not be suitable for Delina and the others. But for a while, the girls in Jiang Hai's manor also found something to play with. As for the older girls, they were also paying attention to these things. Since they were interested in these things, the next day, Chi Jia waved her hand and signaled everyone to go to Boston in batches starting from tomorrow. Buying things and changing themselves couldn't just be Taraga, right? They also didn't lack money. When Taraga went to school on Monday, it can be said that it caused a sensation in her school. Many people in this high school knew that Taraga was rich, and that she was living in Jiang Hai's manor. Therefore, no one dared to provoke her openly or secretly. However, not provoking her didn't mean that they would play with her, right? Especially looking at her rustic appearance, only the carefree Bessie Oliver and the tomboyish Pearl Circe would play with her. But today when she went to school, those people discovered that they were really blind. The girls were cursing the vixen and little slut in their hearts, while the boys were shouting beautiful women and goddesses in their hearts. Taraga originally wasn't ugly, and her facial features were very delicate. However, because she was in the mountains all year round, she was a little tanned and her skin wasn't very good. These days, although she ate a lot of good things, her skin returned to normal, but it was still very dark. In addition, she didn't wear makeup, didn't do her hair, didn't wear jewelry, and didn't wear any beautiful clothes, so she usually looked very rustic. But today she was completely different. She had put on some light makeup on her skin. At least she didn't look completely bronze anymore. Her facial features were more three-dimensional, her eyes were brighter, and her skin was more tender. Her button-down hair bounced up and down as she walked. She looked both intellectual and emotional. She was wearing the Versace clothes that she bought yesterday, with small Swarovski accessories on her hands and feet, plus a pair of casual shoes. She looked very lively and fashionable. As soon as she walked to school, she attracted a lot of attention. And under these people's admiring gazes, Taraga's confidence was rising rapidly. As the saying goes, 3 people make a tiger. When only one person said that you were beautiful, you might laugh at yourself. However, when 10,000 people said that you were beautiful, that person's self-confidence would expand infinitely. Tarag was the same. Seeing her like this, her teacher Mary Jane specially called Jiang Hai and said that he did a good job. In this regard, Jiang Hai could only laugh. Of course, he knew that he did a good job. In the next few days, the trend that Taraga brought about made Jiang Hai happy for a long time. What? It was mainly because of an old saying. To be honest, Jiang Hai usually didn't pay much attention to makeup. At least, he rarely touched women with heavy makeup because you didn't know how scary she was after removing her makeup. It was precisely because of this that the women in Jiang Hai's manor basically didn't put on makeup. At most, they would apply some sunscreen or hydration products. Therefore, there were very few makeup products. Recently, the trend brought by Tarag had made these girls put on a little makeup. If they looked good, naturally Jiang Hai would be the one to take advantage of it. In recent days, Jiang Hai felt that his waist might not be able to bear it, but he still enjoyed it and didn't get tired of it. When a person's life reached this level, there was no need to ask for more. Just like what Selena Gomez said, the things that men pursued were nothing more than those few points. Money, power, fame, women. Now that Jiang Hai had all these, it didn't matter if he became a salted fish or something. Speaking of money first, it was impossible for Jiang Hai to be as rich as a country, but it was no problem for him to be as rich as a province. Speaking of power, he was like a local tyrant in Winthrop and even in Boston. In China he might have money but no power. He was probably meat on some people's plates and could be eaten whenever they wanted. But in the United States he was the local tyrant. Speaking of fame, Jiang Hai's beef, fish and forage were sold all over the world. He was quite famous. Finally there were women. Jiang Hai was surrounded by beautiful women. If he wanted to sleep with them, he could sleep with them at any time. Moreover, he had a lot of choices. He could even do it together. Under such circumstances, what was there to strive for? He didn't have any thoughts of rushing out of the universe and going to the world. He could buy whatever he wanted, do whatever he wanted, eat whatever he wanted, and it was all the best. His life was like this and he didn't have any other requirements. He wasn't one of those empty, lonely rich kids who had nothing to do but look for excitement. He was just an ordinary upstart. He didn't have any thoughts of changing the world. He just wanted to change his own life. Just as Jiang Hai was happily passing every day step by step, one day in late April, Dulles Gerard, who had gone to Europe to participate in this year's Magaon wine competition, called Jiang Hai and temporarily put an end to his happy daily life. Jiang Hai was a little unhappy about this, but even if he was unhappy he still had to go to Europe. This time Dulles Gerard really had something to discuss with Jiang Hai. A certain red wine distributor in Europe had taken a fancy to Jiang Hai's products. In order to expand the red wine market, Jiang Hai had to go. But the good news was that he could take his own plane. Chapter 1023. Yes, Jiang Hai's plane had arrived. To be exact, it had arrived a few days ago. He took Azalina and the others to see the plane. After making sure that everything on the plane was in accordance with his requirements, he took the plane for a spin and then temporarily put it in the Tinglong company. There was no other way. Jiang Hai was a person who was really idle. He didn't have anything to do by plane. In the beginning he was hot-headed and bought a plane. It was indeed convenient to travel, but he really didn't use it often. However, he couldn't support the crew for no reason, so he temporarily gave it to the Soaring Dragon Company. The Soaring Dragon Company had a lot of planes, but they were basically second-hand cargo planes. When the company was first established, Jiang Hai bought it for nearly $200 million. Because it was a cargo plane, it wasn't expensive. He bought 3 large planes, 6 medium planes and 11 small planes. The small planes were for domestic use in the United States, the medium planes were for the Middle East, Australia and Europe, and the 3 large planes were mainly for Asia. Cargo planes weren't as expensive as passenger planes. After all, they didn't need to be renovated and were mainly used to store goods. So basically, they could only fly steadily without any problems. A large passenger plane, like Jiang Hai's, cost tens of millions of dollars, but a second-hand cargo plane only cost $6 million. A medium-sized plane only cost $2 million, while a small plane could fly across the entire United States. For example, the one that flew from Boston to Miami only cost $600,000 to $700,000. It wasn't much different from the new twin-engine plane in Jiang Hai's house. However, it didn't cost too much to buy these planes, but Jiang Hai rented a warehouse building and 2 runways at Boston's Edward Lawrence Logan International Airport, which cost him a lot of money. Now that the new plane was in place, the new plane was parked at the airport here. Normally, the plane would be given to the people of the Tinglong Company, who could use it when they went on a business trip or something. However, when Jiang Hai wanted to use it, Jiang Hai had to use it first unconditionally. After all, it was his. Since the plane was available, they just had to pick a day to go because they could leave at any time. This time, only Jiang Hai, Azalina, Wallace Shelley and Knerson Peters were going. Recently, the 3 of them had accompanied Jiang Hai the most. Knerson Peters was very good and seemed to be close to strangers. Wallace Shelley was responsible for the network and understanding the situation, and Azalina was responsible for protecting Jiang Hai. The division of labor was clear. Originally, Jiang Hai also wanted to ask Qi Jie if they wanted to go. After all, they were going to Paris, France this time. But they had already been there once last year. This time they didn't intend to go. First, it was because they had already been there. There was really nothing fun there. The things that could be bought in Paris could still be bought on Fifth Avenue in New York and the price might be cheaper. New York could be reached in 3 hours by car. But to fly to France they needed to drive to the airport first, then fly for a few hours. After getting off the plane they had to take a few hours by car. So, those luxuries and the like were no longer tempting to them. Secondly, Jiang Hai's time this time was very short. He would only be going for 2 or 3 days. There was no need for him to stay for a few days. So, after they took turns with Jiang Hai a few times, they directly let go of Jiang Hai, who was already a little weak, and left. Sitting in the plane, Jiang Hai didn't take long to arrive at Charles de Gaulle Airport in France. After getting off the plane, Dulles Gerard had been waiting there for a long time. Seeing Jiang Hai and the others coming out, he immediately smiled and greeted them. Jiang, this is a big deal. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Dulce Gerard also smiled and said to him, what kind of big deal is it? Looking at Dulce Gerard's smiling face, Jiang Hai also smiled. If it can make Dulce Gerard, an old man who is used to seeing the world, so happy, it means that the other party's price is really high this time. The initial intention is to increase our market price by 20% from last year's market price. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Dulce Gerard also whispered. After hearing Dulce Gerard's words, Jiang Hai's eyebrows couldn't help but raise. This number is really a bit fierce. You know, although Jiang Hai's goal is to sell a bottle of $2,000, but that is to hide the wine for 5 years. Now his wine has only been hidden for 2 years. There are still 3 years to go. And the wine that was hidden for a year last year, Jiang Hai's selling price is $800 a bottle. 50,000 bottles a year would be $40 million. With an increase of 20%, that would be $8 million in profit, which would be $960 a bottle. He was one step closer to his goal. Besides, he really wasn't just selling 50,000 bottles a year. Since they know that this business is good, they can also make more. Anyway, they have enough manpower. After all, there are so many girls in Jiang Hai's house who are idle. Making wine often is good for their skin and can also give them something to do. This year, according to Dulce Gerard, Jiang Hai's grape output is more than the previous 2 years. Originally, grapes are not annual plants. The more years they are raised, the more they will grow. According to Dulce Gerard and O'Connor Murphy's statistics, Jiang Hai can make about 150,000 bottles this year. Next year, these 150,000 bottles will be sold, according to $960 a bottle, that's $144 million. Although it can't be compared with fishing and animal husbandry, this is really a business without any capital, and the investment is not big. Now, not to mention hundreds of millions of dollars in profit, at least tens of millions of dollars in profit, Jiang Hai is still very interested. Tell me in detail. Hearing Dulce Gerard's words, Jiang Hai asked as he walked out. Dulce Gerard also told Jiang Hai in detail. Last year, some of Jiang Hai's red wine was sold to Prawalton, and some to some European distributors. In fact, there was no advertising or anything like that, and the brand of his Soaring Dragon Manor was used. The sales volume was okay. Basically, when put on the shelves, it can be sold out within 3 months. Basically, there is no backlog and there is no shortage of supply. The Soaring Dragon Manor's brand is indeed strong, but that is in the beef and seafood market. Although red wine is also a food, more people recognize the old brands of France. It is not easy for some new brands to enter the market. It is like the same kind of electrical appliances. If a domestic American suddenly comes out with a mobile phone, how much trust do you have in it? No matter what it is, there is a specialization in the industry, so it is no wonder that people do not have high trust in Jiang Hai's wine. Even if Jiang Hai's wine is much better than the average red wine, they will not believe it too much. When a bottle of red wine is sold wholesale for $800, it will be sold for at least $900, and the choice of $900 is quite a lot. For example, in China, the wine made by a small workshop is better than Mount Ai Flying Heaven, but it is also sold for 1,000 renminbi. If the two wines are put together, what will you buy? So there is nothing to compare. Originally, Jiang Hai did not rely on this thing to make money, nor did he care too much about it. The one he cared about the most was Dulce Gerard. So, although he won an award last year and made some reputation, he came again this year to build up the reputation of this brand. In this regard, Jiang Hai naturally agreed with both hands. The other party is running to make money for him, so what is there to be dissatisfied with? So, as soon as he said that, Jiang Hai directly spent a lot of money. Go, all the expenses will be reimbursed. Stay in a 5-star hotel and eat the best food. Old Dulce Gerard does not have it easy, so Jiang Hai naturally will not be stingy with this small amount of money. It is more a matter of attitude. Jiang Hai does not talk about other things, at least in terms of benefits. He is extremely generous. Just like what Dulce Gerard thought, this year's Magaon wine competition is also tasted with the bottle covered. The wine in Jiang Hai's manor, whether it is 1 year old or 2 years old, tastes much better than ordinary wine. It is comparable to the best wine in the world. One can imagine how terrifying the wine that has been in the cellar for 5 years will be after it is taken out. Now that it is 2 years old, there is a faint hint that it is going to be the best. Last year, when it was awarded the gold medal, there was still a lot of discussion. This year, almost 70% of the people voted for Jiang Hai's wine. Winning the gold medal can be said to be deserved, and winning the gold medal for 2 years in a row has attracted the attention of some people. One of them is called Balian Mudun. This person is currently one of the largest distributors of red wine in Europe. After tasting Jianghai's wine and understanding the market, he is quite interested in Jianghai's wine. Therefore, he looked for Dulles Gerard and discussed with him about the European distribution rights of this wine. For this reason, he even said that he would raise the price by 15%. Of course, this price was raised by Dulles Gerard and also by himself. Naturally, this price could still be raised. According to Dulles Gerard, it should be able to be raised by 20%. After a preliminary calculation of how much profit he would get if he raised the price by 20%, he immediately called Jiang Hai. This kind of business is tens of millions or even hundreds of millions. He does not dare to make a decision for his boss. This is also the reason why Jiang Hai likes the people in his manner. They really know how to conduct themselves. Although Jiang Hai is a layman, they are just talking about the meaning. The person who really makes the decision is Jiang Hai. Facts have proven that they are right because Jiang Hai is always able to create miracles. In an ordinary pasture, the beef he sold was the best. In an ordinary fishery, the seafood he sold was also the best. Who knew if an ordinary winery could create miracles? Chapter 1024. Sitting in the Rolls-Royce that Dulles Gerard specially rented from a five-star hotel, Jiang Hai and the others arrived at the hotel. Dulles Gerard came by himself, but he stayed in a suite. This was also Jiang Hai's request. He was not short of money when he went out to do business. If he wanted to talk about business, it would be too embarrassing to rent a standard room. Therefore, no matter who it was, even if it was Edouard Anderson or Robbins Garcia, they all rented suites in five-star hotels because they were not short of money. Jiang Hai naturally stayed in the presidential suite. This was to show off his strength and also to show his strength. Before Jiang Hai came, Dulles Gerard had already booked a presidential suite. After Jiang Hai and the others arrived, they went straight up to rest. Connerson Peters was driven to Dulles Gerard's room by Jiang Hai, and the presidential suite was naturally occupied by Jiang Hai, Azalina, and Wallace Shelley. After the two entered, they did not say anything and scanned the surroundings to see if there were any bugs or cameras. After confirming that there were no problems, Jiang Hai and the others began to study the problem of meeting clients with ease. However, Jiang Hai and the others did not make an appointment tonight. First, Jiang Hai was a little tired after a day of flying. Second, they wanted to leave the other party hanging. They made an appointment at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning to talk about business. Since the wine competition in Marquette was over, Jiang Hai and the others did not need to go to Marquette anymore. They could just stay in Paris. In the afternoon, Jiang Hai and the two girls had a good rest together. Of course, no one knew whether they had taken advantage of each other or who had taken advantage of who. Anyway, nothing happened in the afternoon. In the evening, Jiang Hai and the others went out to eat. Jiang Hai didn't care much about his clothes or his car. First, it was easy to drive, and second, it looked good. He didn't really like those RVs or supercars. His body size was a bit too big. Even if he squeezed those supercars into his car, it wouldn't be comfortable. Therefore, there were very few supercars in his car. Basically, it was either some black technology car or his favorite SUV. Among them, there was no need to talk about the Battle Shield. However, compared to clothes, jewelry, and cars, Jiang Hai was very picky when it came to food. Of course, this was also a problem that he had developed in recent years after becoming rich. He used to eat everything. When you go to a country, you naturally have to eat the country's specialties, unless you can't accept this way of eating. For example, there were a lot of people in China who liked to eat insects. However, the highest limit that Jiang Hai could accept was silkworm pupae. It was not the small bee pupae, but the large silkworm pupae from the northeast. Other than that, he couldn't stand other insects. Oh right, there was also the dragonfly that he roasted when he was young. In China there are a lot of people who like to eat insects. I won't introduce many provinces here, lest people say that Jiang Hai is some kind of regional black or something. But it is true that insects are a very common delicacy in some provinces. There is even a street in a tourist city that basically sells insects, and people who go there to play will all try it. There were also a lot of people in the northeast who liked to eat insects. For a period of time, outside the food stalls and barbecue stalls in Jiang Hai's hometown, Bing City, there were insects everywhere. The big black beetle, also known as the water bug. Now, the more famous one was the legendary corpse bug. It was considered a close relative. There were also bees and silkworms. Some people also ate cockroaches, grasshoppers, scorpions, centipedes, etc. Because there were no insects in Bing City, bamboo worms from the south were very rare in the barbecue stalls in the northeast. The price was very high. When Jiang Hai was still in school, some of his classmates would bring these cooked insects to school as snacks. Of course, the main reason was to attract everyone's attention. After these insects were fried, they would sprinkle some 5-spice powder on it. It was just like fried peanuts. But Jiang Hai had never tried it. He really did not like to eat these things. In France, although French cuisine had always been the king of Western cuisine, there were still some things that Jiang Hai did not like to eat. For example, snails. Originally, Jiang Hai ate snails, conches and other things. But the big white snails in France, he had no interest in them because they don't cook them well. Compared to snails, foie gras and other things, he can also eat them. But what he ate tonight was a French snack called cheese hot pot. As the name suggested, it was similar to hot pot. It was cooked with a high degree of white wine and cheese. After the cheese was melted, some bread, vegetables, fruits, sausages, and slices of meat were put into the hot pot and cooked for a while before they were taken out to eat. It was very fragrant. Jiang Hai had eaten it the last time he was here. Now that he was here, he naturally wanted to taste it again. As for the white wine, it was brandy. Western countries also had different types of white wine. For example, Soviet Russia had vodka. Of course, Soviet Russia had vodka. Britain had whiskey, Cuba had rum, Mexico had tequila. Gin was produced in the Netherlands, but it was developed by the British. Of course, what was mentioned here were the main production areas and sources. Naturally, other countries also had their own. As for France, perhaps they were really fated with grapes. Their red wine was the best in the world, and their white wine, which was also known as brandy, was also one of the best in the world. At least, it was one of the most expensive ones. Just like the legendary XO and Louis XVI, which were known by everyone, were brandy. Among them, XO referred to the special grade brandy, so there were many of them every year. Louis XVI was a brand. Jiang Hai had no interest in these because he did not like to drink foreign wine. In the past, he was poor and could not afford to drink it. Now that he had money, he was not used to drinking it because he was not at the level of pretending to be cultured. Now, others had to pretend to be cultured to suit their taste. What was a successful person? That was it. When they arrived at a cheese hot pot restaurant, Jiang Hai and the others had a good meal. Because it was not far away, they did not need to drive. At about 8 p.m., Jiang Hai and the others returned to the hotel. Here, Jiang Hai also wanted to make it clear that when you are in Paris, don't go out at night. Among all the capitals of developed countries in the world, the security in Paris was the worst. It was the worst. Parisians, or to be exact, the French, were very chinibu. Anyway, no one in France looked at Jiang Hai, so he was not afraid of offending people. The British were arrogant. After all, they were an empire on which the sun never set. To put it bluntly, they were pretentious. It was the kind of feeling that when you see them talking, you want to beat them up. As for the French, to put it bluntly, they were elegant. After all, they were the capital of romance and art. To put it bluntly, they were chinibu. They belonged to the kind of people who would do whatever they wanted. Don't ask them why. They were artists. They had nothing to say to ordinary people like you. So you see, the French sometimes did things inexplicably. They did whatever they wanted without any stance or foundation. Just like when China held the Olympic Games, they slapped people's faces loudly. But after a few years, they would shamelessly move forward again. It was hard to say anything because their way of thinking was really hard to understand. Central and Eastern Europe had not been peaceful for the past few years, so all the countries had closed their doors. France had started to recruit refugees. Although it was a humanitarian matter, it had also offended the terrorists. If you recruited all the people, where would they find people to fight? In addition, among these refugees, many of them were not good people. So the crime rate in Paris was very high. It was precisely because of this that the local people in Paris did not go out at night. At night, it was very quiet. In addition, the terrorists had been mainly targeting France. After all, they had offended them, so they came from time to time. It was really a bit frightening. Jiang Hai's team was amazing. Their individual fighting strength was very strong. But they didn't need to get involved with these desperados, so after dinner, they returned to the hotel early. They didn't want to wander outside. Besides, there was nothing to see. Knowing that this place wasn't peaceful, the shop owners closed early. After returning to the hotel, Jiang Hai was ready to go back and watch TV for a while and rest. But when he walked into the lobby, he suddenly heard someone arguing there. He took a look and found that it was two people with black hair and yellow skin. They were talking at the front desk. The man had been arguing and the woman was stopping him. Jiang Hai was not a meddlesome person. Even if the two people were Wuxia, Jiang Hai was not going to intervene. But when he saw the woman's appearance, he could not help but be stunned. Because this woman he actually knew, Beauty Han? Looking at the woman, Jiang Hai could not help but raise his eyebrows. To be honest, there were many people who had sex with him in the past few years. Except for the people who lived in his house, he did not have many memories of them. But this woman he remembered. This woman was not Wuxia, but a South Korean. Jiang Hai met her when he went to South Korea to pretend to be 13. Something very indescribable happened. Originally, he thought that after he left, he might not have any interaction with this woman in his life, but he did not expect to meet her again here. What would her expression be if she saw him? What's the situation over there? Jiang Hai grabbed a waiter and asked him. Chapter 1025. Oh, it's like this. The two people over there are husband and wife. Sir said that they booked a room in our hotel on the website, but it's not available online. Looking at their appearance, they shouldn't be here to mess around. It's very likely that they were cheated by a travel agency or a phishing website. Hearing Jiang Hai's inquiry, the waiter here also said immediately. He knows Jiang Hai. He came in the hotel's Rolls-Royce and stayed in the presidential suite after coming in. Such a VIP is not someone he can afford to provoke. It seems that this person looks similar to the two guests over there. It is very likely that they are compatriots or something. Naturally, he won't care about it. If Jiang Hai knows that this guy recognizes him as a Korean, he doesn't know if he will let this guy know why the flowers are so red. Of course, if he wants to beat people, it is inevitable that he will say Bakialu after beating people up. Even if it's shameful, he can't shame Huasia's face, right? But fortunately, Jiang Hai doesn't have the ability to read minds. Forget it, I don't want to argue with you. Today is the day of my 11th wedding anniversary with my wife. I don't want to quarrel with you. Since I spent money in vain, then okay, we don't want that money. Now give us a room. Just as Jiang Hai asked in the distance, the man here, the husband of the Korean woman, raised his hand and said with a serious face, then took out his bank card. This is France, not South Korea. His temper has to be restrained. Sorry, sir, our hotel store does not accept direct check-in. We only accept advance reservations and VIP customers. Of course, if you directly stay in a suite, then we can also handle it for you. After hearing the man's words, the front desk waiter here still had a good temper and still refused him with a smile. You are discriminating. You just don't want us to stay. I have money. What do you mean by this? Believe it or not, I will go to the embassy. But after hearing her words, the man here was going crazy. How can there be such a place? They are simply targeting me and they only accept reservations? He has only heard of hotels that do not accept reservations. How can they only accept reservations? This guy is discriminating against me, these despicable French bastards. Sir, the requirements are all written here. There are English, French, Portuguese, Chinese and Japanese. Hearing his roar, the receptionist sighed. In fact, she knew that she had offended this person when she said those words. I'm from South Korea. Why do I need to know English, Chinese and Japanese? Why is there no South Korean language? This is blatant discrimination. After hearing the receptionist's words, the man became even more furious. Okay, Jingxuan, if we can't live here, we'll go somewhere else. Paris is so big, we don't have to live here. Looking at her husband who had gone berserk, Han Jiaren hugged him tightly. Although she was also very tired, it was obvious that now was not the time to throw a tantrum. Even a powerful dragon could not suppress a local snake, not to mention that they were not dragons. Go help them. Looking at the quarrel over there, Jiang Hai couldn't help but shake his head, then said to Dulles Gerard. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, Dulles Gerard walked to the counter. Dulles Gerard was originally a Frenchman. Coupled with his aristocratic temperament and the financial resources to open 2 suites, as soon as he walked over, the people at the front desk nodded politely. Even the security guards in the distance slowed down their pace at this time. The two of you, do you want to check in? You really need to make a reservation here because this is a private hotel in France. Rooms are usually not sold to the public. Walking over, looking at the furious Yen Jingxuan and the helpless Han Jiaren, Dulles Gerard said with a smile, then in front of them he took out a card from his body. If the two of you want to check in, I can help. Hearing Dulles Gerard's words, the two people here calmed down a little, then nodded politely, and then with the help of Dulles Gerard, they quickly went through the check-in procedures. Thank you so much, I don't know if I have the honor of treating you to a meal? After going through the check-in procedures, Yen Jingxuan looked at Dulles Gerard with a serious face and said, this really helped them a lot. You don't have to thank me, it was our family's Mr. Jiang who asked me to come and help the two of you. It's not easy to go out. Hearing his words, Dulles Gerard didn't take the credit, but glanced at Jiang Hai and the others behind him. Oh, that Mr. Jiang is Korean? When she saw Jiang Hai and the others standing there, the originally relieved Han Jiaren's pupils dilated in an instant. That figure, how could she be wrong? But her husband didn't notice that something was wrong with her. Instead, he politely bowed to them and Jiang Hai just nodded. Sorry, Mr. Jiang is from Wuxia. Since the two of you have already checked in, I wish the two of you an entertaining trip. Goodbye. After seeing Jiang Hai nod and walk to the elevator, Dulles Gerard also said with a smile, then walked over. Everyone walked into the elevator together. Watching the elevator door close, Han Jiaren was still a little confused. Boss, do you still have feelings for that big sister? Why are you so reluctant to let her go? In the elevator, Huali Shelley deliberately leaned over to Jiang Hai's side and whispered in his ear. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but pinch her butt. What nonsense are you talking about? Your boss, I have been through thousands of flowers, but not a single leaf has touched me. Glancing at her, Jiang Hai said calmly. He has always believed in a principle. Men can go out and have fun, but when they're done they must remember to go home. Not touched? There are more than 20 people in the villa? But hearing what he said, Azalina began to tear him down. Ahem, I'm being kind, well, that's it. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai said a little unnaturally, but only the two of them laughed. As for Knerson Peters, he didn't understand. Dulles Gerard understood and pretended not to understand. He is quite loyal to his boss and he knows what to do. On this side, Jiang Hai returned to his room to rest. On the other side, Han Jiaren and her husband Yan Jingxuan, after going through the check-in procedures, also got the room card and then went to their own room. After entering, Ting Jingxuan was very happy. It was also his first time staying in this hotel. The reason why he booked this hotel online was that it looked very good on the internet. The room was very elegant, clean, and all the facilities were very complete. Although it was just an ordinary standard room, to be honest, the facilities here can be ranked among the top in a 5-star hotel. After taking out all the clothes and the luggage, he filled the jacuzzi in the bathroom with water. He wanted to take a good bath and wash away his fatigue. As for his wife, Han Jiaren didn't do anything at this time except for being a little dazed. Ever since she saw Jiang Hai, she was in a daze. She walked into the room and sat in front of the bed. She didn't know what to do. In addition to being in a daze, she was still in a daze. Until Ting Jingxuan finished his bath, she was still in a daze. Hey, what's wrong? I've finished showering. Why haven't you packed up yet? Aren't you going to take a shower? Looking at Han Jiaren, Yan Jingxuan asked with some doubts. Hearing his words, Han Jiaren reacted and immediately began to pack up her things. Oh, I was thinking about something just now. Let's just go and leave our daughter to my mother-in-law. I don't know how she is. While packing up, Han Jiaren lied, but he had to admit that her acting skills were very good. Don't worry, my mother raised me so well. Our daughter will be fine. But then again, why did the Wuxia guy help us today? Do you know him? While drying his hair, Yan Jingxuan asked with a puzzled face. Hearing his words, Han Jiaren, who was packing up, was also shocked. How is that possible? I haven't been to Wuxia. But after all, she is a well-known actress in South Korea. She suppressed her emotions almost instantly and said in a very peaceful tone. Although they are both actors, Yan Jingxuan didn't doubt it. That's true. The last time you went to Wuxia was many years ago. Are they our fans? After thinking for a while, Yan Jingxuan said excitedly, but Han Jiaren shook her head. Her husband is too optimistic. Doesn't he know that Wuxia is currently under a ban? South Korea's performing groups are not allowed to perform. How can there be any fans? But if he thinks so, then let him think so. She can't say anything more. I didn't expect our popularity to be so high, haha. After packing up her clothes, Han Jiaren walked into the bathroom while Yan Jingxuan was still daydreaming. After changing her clothes, she entered the bathtub that had been refilled with water and slowly sat down. Her mind kept flashing back to some indescribable bits and pieces. She didn't know whether the ending of seeing this guy this time was good or bad. She was really worried that some things would be exposed. It seems that I have to find a time to explain it to him. Biting her lips, Han Jiaren made a decision in her heart. Some things must be done decisively. Otherwise it will only be messed up. She doesn't want to be messed up, so she can only be decisive. After coming to Jiang Hai was a shareholder of Google. Although the shares may not be too much, some of the authority and so on were very open. With Jiang Hai's presence, Huali Shelley could be said to be a tiger with wings. Right now, she may not be as good as the top hackers, but she was already quite good. If she entered that world, she would at least rank in the top 100. What's more, Jiang Hai had no intention of turning that world upside down. She was more concerned with defending and helping Jiang Hai find things. Some of the super encrypted information she couldn't find, like when Jiang Hai wanted to go to the base in Antarctica. She couldn't find any information, nor did she know the exact location. But some of the non-encrypted information wasn't difficult for her to find. Well, as long as I know this guy is reliable, Jiang Hai said with a smile, rubbing Huali Shelley's hair. After laughing and joking for a while, Jiang Hai came out at around 8 o'clock. He called the restaurant and ordered breakfast. Around 8:30 the two girls came out, dried their hair, and breakfast was ready. After eating a very good breakfast, Jiang Hai took a little rest and came to the conference room they booked at 9:30. At this time, Dulles Gerard and Knerson Peters had been waiting for a long time. Less than 10 minutes after they sat down, the person who had an appointment with Jiang Hai had also arrived. "Hello, Mr. Balian Mudun, let me introduce you. This is my boss, the owner of Tenglong Red Wine, Jiang Hai, Mr. Jiang." Seeing the other party come in with a lawyer plus a driver and bodyguard, Dulles Gerard stood up first, smiled at the other party, and then introduced Jiang Hai, and Jiang Hai also reached out his hand. "We finally meet." Looking at Jiang Hai's hand, the man also reached out his hand politely. While shaking hands with Jiang Hai, he also spoke Wuxia in 4 syllables, and said to Jiang Hai with a smile. Foreigners speak Wuxia in 4 syllables when they first learn, which sounds very strange. "Hello, Mr. Mudun, you should speak English. My English is fine." After hearing his words, Jiang Hai did not respond in Chinese, but spoke in English. It's not that Jiang Hai is pretentious, but because he speaks Chinese, Jiang Hai really can't understand. Instead of this, it's better to let him speak English. This is also giving him a way out. Wow, of course that's good. Hearing that Jiang Hai has no problem speaking English, the man also said with a smile. After a few simple greetings, the two groups of people here also sat at the negotiating table. Foreigners don't like to talk about contracts very much. They prefer to be more direct, so after sitting down, they directly handed over a draft contract. "To be honest, Mr. Jiang, I'm really interested in the red wine produced by your manor. Its taste can even be compared with the best wineries in Bordeaux, but to be honest, with your company's marketing and Walmart sales, it's difficult for your red wine to sell at a high price. If you agree to license all your wine to me, I can provide a price 15% higher than the market price of your red wine." Looking at Jiang Hai and the others looking at the contract, Balian Mudun also said with a smile. "Mr. Mudun wants to buy all our red wine? I've never heard of this." Hearing his words, Jiang Hai glanced at Dulles Gerard beside him and saw him shaking his head slightly. He knew that this guy just added this clause. What's the difference? To be honest, the red wine consumed in Europe and the Middle East is in the millions of bottles every year. I checked the output of your manor, 50,000, 100,000? 150,000. Not to mention 150,000, even 500,000, what's the difference between this and selling it all to me? Balian Mudun said with a smile when he heard Jiang Hai's words. "The difference is big. If I sell it all to you, then wouldn't I have to live under your nose? I'm not very interested in the cooperation you mentioned." Hearing his words, Jiang Hai shook his head. Indeed, according to what he said, there doesn't seem to be any difference, and he also bought all the wine in Jiang Hai's manor, so Jiang Hai has less to worry about. But don't forget that Jiang Hai's things are always in short supply. Red wine is only temporary and it will be different in the future. Jiang Hai's goal is to sell a bottle for $2,000, and now if he cooperates with this person, then this person can sell it for $2,000 in the future. Jiang Hai doesn't know if this person can sell it for $2,000 in the future, but at least this price has nothing to do with Jiang Hai, and the most important thing is that after signing the contract, the wine will be his, and at most, it will be a loss if he sells it. If he is sent by another winery and suddenly tells Jiang Hai that they can't sell it, then it will be a loss. How can a person like Jiang Hai sign this kind of contract? He and Prawalton have never signed a contract. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, this person said with some surprise, "Wow, then what is Mr. Jiang interested in? I can give you 30% of my annual production, and the contract will be signed once a year. I promise that Walmart and I will not sell red wine to Europe, but the United States and other places have nothing to do with you. I have 2 cooperation models here. First, I will give you 10% of the total annual sales as commission, or 25% above the current market price. How much you sell and whether you can sell it or not is your business, but I only accept contracts that are signed once a year." Jiang Hai gently knocked on the table and said indifferently, When it came to business, the asking price was sky high and the asking price was on the spot. Of course, it couldn't be too outrageous. For example, if Jiang Hai directly said that he would sell it to you for $2,000 a bottle, and then how much you sell it for had nothing to do with him, the person in front of him would probably turn around and leave. With the current popularity of the red wine, 25% above the market price was also a little high. Just like what Dulles Gerard said, the standard was 20%. However, if he said 15%, then Jiang Hai would say 25%. Only then would there be room for negotiation. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, Balian Mudan in front of him couldn't help but gently tap the table in front of him with his fingertips. He had to consider this contract carefully, and he also saw that Jiang Hai was still very tough. Just like what Jiang Hai thought, the most important thing in a business negotiation was the word, negotiation. As for the specific results, a business of tens of millions or hundreds of millions, it was impossible to decide just based on his meeting with Jiang Hai. That would not be worth the loss. Chapter 1027. Boss, this guy is a bit powerful. Wally Shelley said with a smile as he followed Jiang Hai out of the conference room. He glanced at Balian Mudan who followed him out and couldn't help but curl his lips. 2 hours passed quickly. During this time, Balian Mudan kept talking while Jiang Hai just laughed. No matter what he said, Jiang Hai's attitude was always like this. He could sell the European distribution rights, but it was impossible to buy all of them. Moreover, the price was also somewhat fluctuating. One was persuading while the other was stubbornly insisting. Things had really reached a stalemate. Now it depended on who couldn't bear it anymore, or who was more important to this thing in his heart. Dulles Gerard, who also understood this, couldn't help but worry because he knew that Jiang Hai had a total of 3 legs: the ranch, the fishery, and the winery. He was different from men. A man's shortest leg was actually the most important. And among the 3 directions of Jiang Hai's manor, the winery was the shortest, and perhaps the least important. After all, even if Dulles Gerard said it, he also knew that the winery couldn't make tens of billions of dollars a year. Hundreds of millions of dollars was the limit, so for Jiang Hai, it didn't matter if this thing made money or not. But Dulles Gerard was very concerned. Looking at Dulles Gerard beside him, Jiang Hai also chuckled. Don't worry. After all, this is a business worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I will be very concerned. Besides, didn't we already agree on the current situation? What's more, if this deal fails, we still have Walmart. It's just that we won't make as much money. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Dulles Gerard couldn't help but smile and shake his head. He was a little too concerned. It was said that people strive for a breath, and Buddha strives for an incense stick. Compared to the fishery and the ranch, Dulles Gerard knew that he lost miserably. However, he still wanted to try harder. In the past, he had lost by 100 steps. Now he had lost by 99 steps. In fact, it was just to comfort himself. After thinking it through, he couldn't help but shake his head. It was still Jiang Hai who was rich and overbearing, who understood. This is my first time doing business. TSK, it feels quite interesting. Since he doesn't want to give in and still wants to get benefits, then let's wait for a few more days. When I'm not interested, we'll have a showdown. If it works, then it's fine. If it doesn't, then we'll leave. Seeing that Dulles Gerard understood, Jiang Hai smiled and took them directly to the hotel's Western restaurant. Jiang Hai was a good boss. Not only was he willing to pay at the end of the year, but he was also willing to spend on food and drinks outside. Basically, his employees would eat whatever he ate. The French restaurant of this hotel was quite famous in Europe. The taste was famous and the price was also famous. Since Jiang Hai was here, he naturally wanted to give it a try. After arriving at the Western restaurant, there were no private rooms like in China. Instead, there were booths. Basically, they were for 2 people. At most, there would be a children's chair, and at most, it could seat 4 people. Jiang Hai and the others only opened 2 booths. They casually ordered and ate whatever they wanted. Jiang Hai was so indifferent. Knirson Peters had always been quite a glutton, and today's meal was the same. Not long after, the dishes were served. What was called steak, what was called red wine stewed beef, was a mess. There was meat and seafood. Jiang Hai and the others, except for Dulles Gerard, did not pay attention to some dining etiquette. They ate directly there. Fortunately, it was a booth and no one would pay attention to their situation. Otherwise, it would be inevitable that some pretentious people would come over to show off their superiority. But unfortunately, this kind of old-fashioned face-slapping did not appear in Jiang Hai's restaurant. Until he finished eating, no one came over to pretend. After Jiang Hai paid the bill, he was ready to go back to rest. In the afternoon he still had to discuss business with Balian Mudun. Of course he had to tell Prawalton, Chi Li and Jing Jin about this matter first. When it came to business, Jiang Hai was an out-and-out layman. He was more used to buying everything in one go. For example, how much his beef was sold for, how much his grass was sold for, and how much his fish was sold for. If you don't want to buy, then so be it. If you don't want to buy, then so be it. If you don't want to buy, then so be it. If you don't want to buy, then so be it. If you don't want to buy, then it's useless to make sarcastic remarks. But when discussing business with Balian Mudun, Jiang Hai also intended to hone himself. So for the first time he was only tough but not tough. After eating, Jiang Hai walked outside while thinking about who to call first. But when he walked to the door, he happened to see two people coming in. These two people were none other than Han Jiaren and her husband, whom Jiang Hai saw last night. When they saw Jiang Hai, Han Jiaren's eyes were filled with surprise, and her husband was pleasantly surprised. "Hello, my name is Yan Jingxuan. Thank you for your care last night. Otherwise we might have to go somewhere else for the night." Seeing Jiang Hai, Yan Jingxuan was very excited and quickly said to Jiang Hai, "Oh, it's okay. It's just a small matter. You can do whatever you want. I still have things to do." Looking at these two people, Jiang Hai also chuckled and then gave up his position. After the two people passed, he also led everyone to the elevator. "Jingxuan, I forgot to take my sunglasses. I have to go back and get them." Just as Jiang Hai and the others walked over, Han Jiaren seemed to have gathered her courage. She suddenly stopped and said to Yan Jingxuan anxiously, "No, this is France. Do you need to wear sunglasses to eat?" Hearing Han Jiaren's words, Yan Jingxuan couldn't help but laugh at himself. When did their reputation spread to France? "I'm afraid that some paparazzi may find us. You don't want our anniversary trip to be disturbed." Hearing his words, Han Jiaren also chuckled and said to him, "Well, I'll go with you." Hearing his wife say so, Yan Jingxuan couldn't say anything more, so he was ready to go back with her, but when Han Jiaren heard this, she immediately shook her head. No, the dishes here are so slow. I'll take the elevator and come back soon. Remember to order seafood baked rice for me." After saying that, Han Jiaren quickly left here. Yan Jingxuan looked at her and couldn't help but smile. Then he went to a seat and began to order. Han Jiaren ran and finally stopped the elevator door when Jiang Hai's elevator door was about to close. Ha, I want to talk to you." Pointing to Jiang Hai in the elevator, Han Jiaren said with a serious face. "Huh? What do you want to talk about?" Hearing her words, Jiang Hai looked at her with some doubts. What does he want to talk about with her? She come out? Looking at Jiang Hai's face, "I'm not familiar with you." Han Jiaren was a little annoyed. She grabbed Jiang Hai's clothes and pulled him out. As soon as she started, Azalina and Wallace Shelley also wanted to move, but they were stopped by Jiang Hai. In this way the elevator door closed again and she took Jiang Hai to the next elevator. After pressing her floor, Han Jiaren looked at Jiang Hai seriously. "Why are you here?" Looking at Jiang Hai, Han Jiaren said with a serious face. "Don't worry, I didn't know you were coming. I'm here to talk about business." Looking at her, Jiang Hai smiled and tidied up the creases on his suit. This woman really knew how to flatter herself. "Business? Beef?" Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Han Jiaren looked at Jiang Hai with some doubts. "It's the red wine business. My business is very big." Shrugging his shoulders, Jiang Hai said with a smile. "How big?" Hearing Jiang Hai say it was very big, Han Jiaren couldn't help but look at him with some doubts. "Over 100 million. After thinking about it for a moment, Jiang Hai calmly said, "How much money would he make if the deal is successful?" "Korean won?" "Cut the crap. This is Europe. Your Korean won can't be spent here. Dollar, if you have something to say, just say it. Did you drag me here just to ask me this?" Seeing Han Jiaren keep asking questions, Jiang Hai couldn't help but roll his eyes at her. Did this woman have anything to do? Why did she drag him here for no reason? $100 million? That's 120 billion Korean won. I just wanted to ask why you are here. Since you also have something to do here, let's pretend we don't know each other. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, Han Jiaren muttered in a low voice. Sure enough, they weren't in the same world. 120 billion Korean won, just thinking about it made her scalp tingle. "That won't do. You dragged me away and now you want to leave? I can keep the secret, but you have to give me something in return." Looking at Han Jiaren, Jiang Hai smiled, then lowered his head and looked at her. What are you doing?" Looking at Jiang Hai's face that was getting closer and closer, Han Jiaren was somewhat stunned. At this time, Jiang Hai's mouth kissed her lips. After a round of activity, the elevator arrived at the floor that Han Jiaran pressed the button. When the elevator door opened, Jiang Hai gently put her down outside the elevator door, then waved his hand and pressed the button for his floor. Jiang Hai originally didn't want anything to happen with this Korean, but since she came to his door, he couldn't avoid flirting with her. After all, Jiang Hai was the kind of person who would kick a dog when it crossed the line. Watching the elevator door close, Han Jiaran took a while to recover. This was the first time she had met someone like Jiang Hai. Chapter 1028. What took you so long? Have you brought the food over? The dishes have been served. When she returned to the dining room, Han Jiaran was still in a daze. When she heard Yan Jingxuan's words from afar, she chuckled and walked over. At the same time, she showed off her sunglasses. Yan Jingxuan smiled when he saw that his wife had returned with her sunglasses. Then he began to eat. Han Jiaran bit her lip gently as she looked at her husband in front of her. To be honest, she was very conflicted. She knew that Jiang Hai didn't like her. He even had a prejudice against South Korea, but she didn't know why. Sometimes she would think of that guy. Han Jiaran sat on the chair and looked at Yan Jingxuan in front of her. She didn't know what to do. She knew what was going on with this trip, but she couldn't explain it clearly. This made her feel a little shameless. Speaking of Han Jiaran and Yan Jingxuan's marriage from the very beginning, the woman was stronger than the man. When Han Jiaran was at her peak, she married Yan Jingxuan. Then she retired from acting and stayed at home wholeheartedly. When the woman was stronger than the man might be grateful at first. But gradually this feeling would turn into pressure. Just like Jiang Hai. He and Qi Li were the same at the beginning. When Qi Li and her mother arrived and said that they had chosen Jiang Hai to marry and could even lend him 400,000 yuan for free, Jiang Hai's first thought was that he had stumbled and picked up a gold bar when he needed money the most. But after a year he was treated like air. Everyone around him was pointing at him and hearing rumors every day. Qi Li was a used shoe that had been played by her ex-boyfriend. Qi Li ignored Jiang Hai because she was unrestrained in the company. Qi Li had a new home in the capital and so on. All these pressures weighed on the man's shoulders. In addition, when Jiang Hai called, Jing Jin had ridiculed him. It wasn't that Jiang Hai wasn't human. Even if he knew it was fake at the beginning, he would still have doubts if it was said too much. Since he had doubts, he couldn't directly point at Jiang Hai's nose and ask if he had an affair. Because in Jiang Hai's eyes, he was just a spare tire. When all these things were mixed together, Jiang Hai's choice was to leave. Just like the message he received, Qi Li didn't like him, so he should leave. Whether it was for his own future or for Qi Li's life, it was good for both sides. This was Jiang Hai's choice at the beginning. You couldn't say that he was wrong because he didn't participate in Qi Li's life at all. Of course, what happened later was another story. The way Yan Jingxuan released this pressure was to find information about himself with other women. However, he was still a good person because at least he knew that after going out to play he had to go home. As for Han Jiaran, it was just an accident that she was with Jiang Hai at the beginning. Later he came to her and she agreed. First, it was because he threatened her, and second, it was because she wanted to take revenge on Yan Jingxuan. However, after taking revenge, she felt a little regretful and afraid. In her heart, she and Yan Jingxuan were even. She even owed him a little, so she stopped making trouble. However, sometimes men were such strange creatures. When his wife kept making trouble and crying, his first reaction was annoyance. Yes, he felt very annoyed and was even more unwilling to go home. However, suddenly one day his wife stopped making trouble. Every day she just sat there in a daze. When he wanted to eat, she would cook. When he wanted to put on his clothes, she would tidy up his clothes. There was no smile on her face, no other expression, and she didn't even talk to him. Then this man panicked. He would be afraid. He would think that his wife was completely tired of him, and whether his wife was going to divorce him. Just like when Jiang Hai said that he had wronged Jiang Hai and Qi Li, Jiang Hai was also stunned. The words that he had prepared were useless at that time. It was the same for Yan Jingxuan. When Han Jiaran fell silent, he was also a little afraid. To put it bluntly, although he was under a lot of pressure, he still liked his wife very much. Therefore, after some research, he found a time this year and prepared to go on a trip with Han Jiaran. Han Jiaran was also mentally prepared to leave everything behind and live a good life with Yan Jingxuan. However, she met Jiang Hai. She was an actress. She didn't believe in fate, but she knew that Jiang Hai was indeed her demon. At this time, Jiang Hai didn't care about how Han Jiaran and Yan Jingxuan were doing. He was also too lazy to care. After going back to rest for a while, the negotiations in the afternoon continued. It was still similar to the morning. The other party had been grinding and Jiang Hai had been clinging to his principles. But then again there was some progress. For example, this Balian Mudan was no longer clinging to everything, but he asked for a share of 50%. He also wanted the distribution rights in Europe and the Middle East. The price had been raised to 18%. And Jiang Hai still only gave the European distribution rights. What a joke. He had such a strong relationship with Du Feimin in Dubai. Why would he need a distributor? And Jiang Hai's price had only been reduced to 22%. It seemed that a 20% price increase should be stable. The most important thing now was the difference in supply and location. They would slowly grind it out. Although the negotiations didn't end at 4 o'clock in the evening, they had made a lot of progress. Mr. Jiang, you came to France. It was really late last night. You also need to rest. Today, no matter what, you have to give me a chance to be the host. Seeing that the meeting was over, Jiang Hai was about to leave, but Balian Mudan stopped Jiang Hai first and said with a serious face. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai looked at him curiously. I've already booked a place for dinner at the Pierre Gagnaire. You know, I've been waiting for your arrival for a long time. After dinner, I've also arranged a place to have fun. Looking at Jiang Hai's curious eyes, Balian Mudan also said with a smile. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also glanced at Wallace Shelley and Azalina behind him. After these two nodded, Jiang Hai also nodded, indicating that he could give it a try. Seeing that Jiang Hai was willing to go, Balian Mudan couldn't help but laugh. In fact, foreigners, including French, really didn't like to invite others to dinner. But he had investigated Jiang Hai and knew that Wuxia people liked to invite others to dinner very much. Many business deals were negotiated at the dinner table. Although he didn't want to discuss business at the dinner table, it was inevitable to be the host. Maybe if Jiang Hai was in a good mood, his business could be negotiated well. After Jiang Hai agreed, he went downstairs to pick up the car, and Jiang Hai naturally had the hotel's car to pick him up. Azalina acted as the driver, Knerson Peters sat in the passenger seat, and Jiang Hai and Wallace Shelley sat in the back. On the way, Wallace Shelley checked the situation of the restaurant called Pierre Gagnaire. Pierre Gagnaire was the name of a chef and also the name of a restaurant. It was located on the ground floor of the 5-star Hotel Balzac on the Champs-Élysées. The space wasn't big and the decoration was ordinary, but it was really not an easy thing to eat here because this restaurant was a 3-star Michelin restaurant. You couldn't order food here. There were only 2 set meals, 155 euros for lunch and 310 euros for dinner. Of course, if you wanted to eat 2 sets, you could pay more, but it also depended on whether the other party prepared extra ingredients, otherwise you wouldn't be able to eat. Yes, the restaurant here was so amazing. It was up to you whether you wanted to eat or not. Most importantly, according to the information that Wallace Shelley had found out, if an average person wanted to eat here, even if they were very rich, they would have to make an appointment. A 3-star Michelin restaurant might not even be able to be booked in 2 or 3 months. The reason why Balian Mudan was able to make an appointment was mainly because he had a supply agreement with this restaurant. He was responsible for the red wine of this restaurant. At the same time, it was also quite troublesome to eat in this restaurant. First of all, you had to dress well, which meant you had to wear a jacket, vest, sweater and so on. Fortunately, when Jiang Hai came, he wanted to negotiate, so he brought his only suit. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to wear anything to eat. Secondly, to eat in such a restaurant, you couldn't be late. If you were late by 20 minutes, the restaurant would default to your cancellation. Chapter 1029. Of course, what he thought above was just Jiang Hai's idea. In fact, molecular cuisine was not so simple. To be precise, molecular cuisine referred to combining 2 completely unrelated things into a new thing. It had to have the characteristics of both but not both. For example, soybeans and brine would become tofu when put together. This was a delicacy that changed the molecular structure, not the direct breaking of things that everyone was familiar with. After arriving at this restaurant, Jiang Hai and the others were also divided into many tables and sat down. Then it was time for the dishes to be served. Because this restaurant only provided meal A or meal B, it did not provide activities for guests to choose their meal. There was no other way. A 3-star Michelin restaurant was so amazing. It was like Jiang Hai selling things. It was up to you whether you wanted to buy or not. Here it was up to you whether you wanted to eat or not. But even so, the people who came to eat here were still in short supply. Ordinary tourist groups did not have such treatment. In fact, the set meal wasn't too complicated. There were only 6 dishes in total. Otherwise, it wouldn't be sold for only 310 euros. Well, 310 euros wasn't too complicated. Regarding this, Jiang Hai could only chuckle. The dishes were divided into the appetizer, sweet soup, seafood, main dish, sauerkraut, and dessert. There were only 6 dishes in total. It was different from the 3 to 5 dishes of ordinary French dishes. There was an extra sauerkraut here. The so-called sauerkraut was something like ice cream. Its main function was to clean the mouth and let the taste buds rest. Jiang Hai did not understand this at all. However, the taste of this thing was not bad. After eating this meal in a French 3-star Michelin restaurant, Jiang Hai smacked his lips. To be honest, the food here was quite good. Whether it was the craftsmanship or the raw materials, they were all delicious. However, there was too little. Other than saying that he was half full, he really had no other way to describe it. It was not enough. However, because this was paid for by Balian Mudun, Jiang Hai could not say anything. He had already decided to eat the small hot pot after going back at night. Otherwise, he would starve to death tomorrow morning. Hi Bath, how are the dishes today? When Jiang Hai was thinking about how many servings of meat to order for the cheese hot pot, an old man walked out from the back with a smile. He was wearing a white chef's robe without any grease on it. He didn't wear a hat on his head. His hair was almost bald and it grew messily on his head. Delicious, my dear Pierre. Looking at the old man, Balian Mudun also raised his thumb and said with a smile. It's good that you are satisfied. You should know that the ingredients here are quite hard to come by. I spent a lot of money to snatch these beef and seafood from Sam's Club in Walmart. They belonged to the Soaring Dragon Manor. When he heard Balian Mudun's words, the old man also said proudly, but as soon as he finished speaking, Jiang Hai almost choked on his words. Cough cough, it's okay, it's okay. Seeing the 2 people in front of him looking at him, Jiang Hai couldn't help but say awkwardly. Ah, Pierre, let me introduce you. This is the owner of the Soaring Dragon Manor you mentioned, Jiang Hai. Mr. Jiang, this is Pierre Gagny, the owner and executive chef of this restaurant. Looking at Jiang Hai's awkward appearance, Balian Mudun also explained with a smile. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai nodded calmly. The old man was surprised and rushed to Jiang Hai's side in a big stride. Jiang Hai nodded calmly when he heard Jiang Hai's words. The old man was surprised and rushed to Jiang Hai's side. Oh my God, you are the owner of the Soaring Dragon Manor. I really don't know how you raise the beef and fish. Those things are no longer ingredients but works of art. Do you understand? Holding Jiang Hai's hand, the old man Pierre Gagny said with excitement. Cough, it's okay, it's okay. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai was a little embarrassed. In China, no matter how good a chef is, you are just a chef who serves others. Even if you earn tens of millions a year in front of some entrepreneurs and big bosses, your status is still a little low, but in France it's different. In France, good chefs are artists. The food they make can even be exhibited in art museums. French chefs have a very high status in society, just like this restaurant. Even if they are partners, Balian Mudun still has to make an appointment and line up. As for other people, even if they are the richest man in a certain region, the mayor of Paris or the prime minister of France, they also have to make an appointment and line up. If Pierre Gagny says he won't serve you, he won't serve you. If you don't want to eat, then get out. No matter how much money you have or how much power you have, if he doesn't serve you, he won't serve you. This is what an artist is, and if there is no such person, then he is a chef. I have never seen beef as good as the beef of the Soaring Dragon Manor. That texture, and that seafood. To be honest, Jiang, are you interested in holding an ingredient exhibition? You don't know that there is only a small supply of your ingredients in France every week, a few hundred kilograms of beef and 1 or 2,000 kilograms of fish. Every time, all the purchasers of Michelin restaurants in France will rush to the nearest Walmart as if they are going to war. But even so, they often can't get it. This week my luck is good. My 3 purchasers brought me a total of 80 kilograms of beef and 210 kilograms of fish, but only red fish and grouper. Bro, your anchovy and Atlantic salmon are really too hard to get. It said that you also have giant lobsters, king crabs, and spotted shrimps? Looking at Jiang Hai, the old man Gagny kept talking. Are these things not for sale in France? I really don't know. My beef and seafood are cold. Generally speaking, they are only supplied to the United States. The European side is handled by the Walmart company. I don't know much about it. Hearing the old man's words, Jiang Hai also said with a smile. Hey, you really don't know. If you have time, go to any Walmart in France next Wednesday and take a look. You will understand what is crazy. Your ingredients are great. If you can you let me visit your place? I'm really curious about what kind of soil and water can raise such good ingredients. Hearing that Jiang Hai didn't know much about it, Pierre Gagny also sighed and said, "Of course, my address is Winthrop Town, Boston. After you go there and ask about the Soaring Dragon Manor, almost everyone knows about it. I'm waiting for your visit." Jiang Hai will not refuse such a request. He can just let Chia learn a thing or two from the old man. By then he will have a good meal, right? "This is really great, Jiang, this is my business card. If you want to eat my dishes, you can come at any time. You're my friend." Patting Jiang Hai on the shoulder, the old man Gagny excitedly left his phone number. After Jiang Hai called, the two exchanged phone numbers and he left. "Wow, to be honest, I really envy you, Jiang. Do you know how many years I have supplied him with red wine before I got the right to cut the line? Even so, I still have to make an appointment with a week's time. You can come and eat at any time. TSK, I am more and more confident in your red wine." After watching Jiang Hai and Pierre Gagny exchange phone numbers, Balian Mudun couldn't help but smack his lips. He was really envious and jealous. In this regard, Jiang Hai just smiled and put away his phone. After befriending a Michelin 3-star chef, Jiang Hai's mood became better. After chatting for a while, Balian Mudun told Jiang Hai that they could go to the next program. Although he was not full, Jiang Hai still left. The other party was treating him and he didn't want to eat so much. After dinner, a half-full dinner, Jiang Hai and his group arrived at the other place that Balian Mudun said they could play at night. Of course, because of the relationship between the two women, he didn't go to those smoky nightclubs that only received men. He also heard that Jiang Hai didn't like noisy environments, so he didn't go to those noisy bars. Instead, he went to a bar that occupied a very large area but didn't look luxurious. This bar was called Fighters. Jiang Hai was no stranger to this word. Fighters meant fighters. It was like the game that Jiang Hai had been playing before, King of Fighters, KOF. The F was the abbreviation of this English word, King of Fighters. This was the King of Fighters. As soon as he saw this word, Jiang Hai guessed what this place did. Sure enough, as soon as he entered, Jiang Hai saw a lot of people surrounding a huge octagonal iron cage. They were constantly shouting, and in the iron cage 2 people were fighting hard. Jiang Hai and Knerson Peters were very familiar with such a scene. However, what Knerson Peters wasn't familiar with was what the guy in the striped shirt was doing there. One had to know that there were no referees when he fought. It was much wilder than this match. Unless one side admitted defeat or lost consciousness, the battle would never stop. That was black boxing, and this was just a performance at best. But even so, the battle on the field made the blood of the people below the field spurt out, and the secretion of hormones accelerated. Perhaps deep in the hearts of men, there were some who advocated violence. Watching such a battle, they really liked it. Chapter 1030. Balian Mudun was not like these ordinary spectators. He was also a well-known figure in France. Although he might not have much money, that was according to Jiang Hai's standards. After all, there were not many people in the world who were richer than him. With Jiang Hai and the others, Balian Mudun took them directly to the private room on the 2nd floor. This bar was quite well done. The private room on the 2nd floor was actually like a hotel. There was a living room, a room, and a bathroom inside. Except for the lack of a kitchen, one could live here. The place to watch the game was on the balcony. There were sofas, massage chairs, and even hanging baskets for the children and women. It was quite comfortable. After Jiang Hai and the others walked in, a waiter led them over and handed them an iPad at the same time. On it, there was information about tonight's match. After Jiang Hai and the others finished ordering drinks, they sat calmly on the balcony and watched the game on the field condescendingly. Recently, the UFC in Europe has been quite popular. The fighting mode of the UFC continues here. Other than not allowing head-butting, grabbing hair, gouging eyes, spitting on the opponent, grabbing hair, putting hands and feet into the opponent's mouth, kicking the crotch, digging the orifice, and controlling the small joints, for example, only grabbing the opponent's finger, attacking the spine or the back of the head, attacking the opponent's kidney with the heel, grabbing the ribs, pinching the opponent, kicking the opponent's head to the ground, knee strikes aimed at the head, stomping the opponent to the ground, taking off the opponent's pants, attacking the opponent during the break, or sticking the opponent's neck to the ground. There are almost no restrictions. Continuous knee strikes, head kicks, lateral elbows, and so on are all allowed here. Balian Mudun also explained with a smile when he saw Jiang Hai watching the game below. Boxing had always been a very profitable profession. At present, the world's top-earning sport was still boxing. Boxing might only fight 1 or 2 fights a year, but the broadcasting fee for these 1 or 2 fights was quite terrifying. Although UFC and WWE had been very popular in recent years and had taken away a lot of traffic, Pretty Boy Pacquiao and the others could still earn tens of millions of dollars if they fought once a year. This was far from what NBA players or soccer players could compare to. Although they could also earn that much in a year, they were so tired that they almost didn't have much time to rest. On the other hand, boxing players had a lot more time. Jiang Hai only knew about this after he arrived in America. There was no other way. There weren't many people in China who would pay attention to these things. In fact, a long time ago, several big boxing associations in the world had paid attention to this so-called fighting club in Wuxia. However, because of the policy at that time, basically no situation could enter. If it wasn't for the fact that boxing was an Olympic sport, the court probably wouldn't even broadcast it. Wuxia's Kung Fu was also quite famous internationally. Wuxia's Kung Fu was one of the three major boxing skills in the world. It was Muay Thai, Israeli Mega, and Wuxia's Kung Fu. Nowadays it was better to call it Sanda. However, since the Manchurian Qing entered the pass, in order to castrate the Han people's blood, they also dealt the strongest blow to the martial artists among the people. After this foundation was laid, the previous dynasty was always in turmoil. There was also a shortage of martial artists among the people. When the new Wuxia was established, the existence of martial artists who broke the law reached its peak. And sometimes, these martial artists were even specifically arrested. Martial arts was directly castrated and became just one of the performances. So many years had passed. Although the country had the intention to pick up martial arts, actual combat was not something that could be picked up so easily. In the few major international fighting leagues, there were Chinese players, but they were basically not too strong. Moreover, they were all in the light heavyweight class, flyweight class, or featherweight class. There wasn't even a middleweight class. If one day Wuxia had a super heavyweight boxing champion or a UFC champion, the domestic boxing situation might change a lot. But for now it was just that. This was an unpopular profession. However, in Europe this profession was gradually reviving. Although the UFC was not as popular as boxing, it was not as popular as boxing. But just in Europe and the United States, its standard and personnel's income had been greatly increased. The top fighters in the UFC earned tens of millions of dollars just by fighting 2 matches a year. This did not include endorsements. Of course, the fighters didn't have any endorsements. Firstly, it was because they looked too fierce. Secondly, when they fought, there were requirements for their underwear, shoes, gloves, and so on. Moreover, they didn't appear on camera very often. They really didn't have any endorsements. Unlike basketball and football stars, NBA players had to fight 82 games in a year. As long as they wore the same pair of shoes, as long as they were diligent, they would appear on camera 82 times. At the very least, they would be broadcasted all over the state. Naturally, it was easier to find endorsements. On the other hand, the fighters basically endorsed some cars. However, because they were too big, they couldn't endorse small cars. It was very awkward. Therefore, the fighters' main income was from the live broadcasts. If there were endorsements, there would be endorsements. If there weren't, then forget it. Jiang Hai used to be interested in boxing. He had even specially learned it. Now that he was watching them fight, he was very interested. The two people fighting in the arena were naturally not fighters in the UFC, nor were they famous fighters. They could only be considered average professional fighters or amateurs. They fought here for an appearance fee. Firstly, it was to stimulate the bar's spending. Secondly, it was to allow the audience to place bets. In Europe and the United States, there were many such bars. Of course, some underground boxing bars might be fake. They might even kill people. It was much more exciting. However, the police were also very strict. With such a large territory, it was naturally impossible for it to be an underground boxing bar. Compared to the place where Knerson Peters used to live, this place was simply heaven. The two people in the arena had already fought 2 rounds. One of them was a Brazilian jiu-jitsu player, and the other was a boxer. According to Jiang Hai's opinion, they were not fighting each other. The jiu-jitsu player always wanted to take the other person down. He used his ground techniques. The boxer used his secondary punches to maintain a distance and not let the other person pounce on him. If the other person wanted to pounce on him, a combination of punches would be enough to win him. The fighting techniques of different countries in the world were different. Naturally, their advantages were also different. For example, those who practiced boxing had great strength in their fists, good footwork in their lower body, strong resistance to attacks, and similarly strong endurance. However, the weakest point was the opponent's ground fighting ability. The defense of the lower body was very weak. After falling to the ground, the defense of the joints was weak, and the strength of the counterattack was insufficient. Muay Thai's long-distance leg attacks were strong and fast. They were invincible in close-range elbow and knee attacks. They did not have many advantages in ground fighting, but it could be said that they were not at a disadvantage. The disadvantage was that their mid-range attacks were weak. When their legs and elbows could not hit their opponents, their fists would be somewhat weak. This was the opposite of boxing. Because Muay Thai mainly trained the bones, there were very few heavyweight fighters. Therefore their defense was not strong. It was common to see Muay Thai fighters fight with other types of boxing. They fought beautifully, but they were finished after 2 or 3 heavy blows. Mega Jitsu and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu were mainly specialized in ground fighting, uniform techniques and joint techniques. They could not compete with Muay Thai in a head-on fight, and they could not compete with boxing in a head-on fight. However, as long as the opponent was down, the Mega Jitsu and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu had a high chance of winning. Therefore it was common to see UFC matches. After a few exchanges, the opponent would take the initiative to lie down. He was not in a hurry to stand up. Instead he used his 2 legs to block the opponent. Under the situation where the opponent was not allowed to directly step on the opponent and kick the opponent's head while lying down, the opponent could only lower his body to fight. This fight would cause the opponent to lose his balance. At that time it would depend on the situation. As long as the opponent was caught, there was a high chance that the fight would be over. Of course, if you pounced on the opponent and were hit by the opponent's boxing combo, or were swept in the head or hit in the cheek by a Muay Thai fighter, then the fight would probably be over. At this time the 2 people in the arena were like this. The 2 people's skills were about the same. He was afraid of the opponent's ground attack, and the opponent was afraid of the opponent's fast punches. Therefore for a while the 2 of them were in a stalemate. From time to time they would test each other. It was quite lively. "Yo, isn't this Mudun? Why do you have time to come here today? Didn't you go to discuss business?" Just as everyone was watching happily here, a joking voice suddenly came from afar. Jiang Hai looked up and saw a bronze-skinned man wearing a white cloak made of feathers. He was hugging 2 foreign girls on both sides and looked here proudly. The lighting here was actually not very good. It was a bit dark, but even so he was still wearing a big pair of sunglasses. He was not blind, but he was pretending. And from his words the latter was more likely. This person should not be from South America or Southeast Asia. He seemed to be the descendant of a black man and a white man. The 2 girls next to him were similar. They were not too black, but they were not white either. They could be considered mixed race. "Oh, it's you. What's the matter? If there's nothing, then get lost. I have to accompany a client today." Hearing this person's words, Balian Mudun was not someone to be trifled with. He gently shook the red wine in his goblet and said indifferently. Hearing that this guy dared to talk to him like this, the face of the mixed race here changed and several of his men behind him also stood up, but he waved his hand at this time, stood up and walked to the edge of the balcony, looking at Jiang Hai and the others. Chapter 1031. Oh, so tough. Looking at Balian Mudun, the mixed blood walked over with a look of disdain. He took off his sunglasses and a pair of humorous triangular eyes appeared in front of Jiang Hai. Looking at the triangular eyes, Jiang Hai couldn't find any other adjectives other than where did he get the confidence to take off his sunglasses? "Oh, so what if I'm tough? Do you still want another round? Is it you or is it your jock?" Balian Mudun glanced at the man with disdain and said with a look of disdain. He didn't see that this Balian Mudun was not a good person either. "Hey, let's have another round. Wait until the end of today." After nodding at Balian Mudun with his finger, the man walked back with a smile and went back to watching the game. Jiang Hai frowned. He wasn't here to stand up for others or to fight. Although he wasn't afraid of anyone, he didn't need to be someone else's gun. If this Balian Mudun was such a person, let alone 20%, even if it was 25%, he wouldn't let him represent him. This was because this guy would cause trouble for him. "Mr. Jiang, don't worry, this guy is called Terrell King. He is the son of a director of the red wine distribution company I used to work for. This is Paris, he won't dare to mess around. Besides, I'm quite confident in my bodyguard." Balian Mudun saw Jiang Hai frown and couldn't help but explain with a smile. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai's frown loosened a little. As long as it had nothing to do with him, he didn't mind watching a good show. After hearing his words, Azalina and the others also noticed Balian Mudun's chauffeur and bodyguard. Wallace Shelley thought for a moment, put on her glasses and quietly scanned the person. Then, she used the microcomputer in her makeup box to check the person's situation while pretending to touch up her makeup. In less than 3 minutes, she had already investigated the situation of this person, and then Azalina whispered in Jiang Hai's ear. Balian Mudun's bodyguard was called John Vic. He was originally a member of the French Foreign Corps. He left the team at the age of 25 and fought in the underground world of Europe. He even worked as an assassin, but his rate of accepting missions was very low. He had some reputation in the underground boxing world, but in the Secret Service world, According to Azalina, if they fought in the ring, she might not be his opponent. But if they fought now, she could kill him 100 times before he could react. There was no need to worry about such a person. He could be a bodyguard, but he could not threaten Jiang Hai. Moreover, if they fought in the ring, Knerson Peters was not afraid of anyone. After confirming that there was no problem with his safety, Jiang Hai continued to watch the game with Balian Mudun. Of course, they could also bet. European bookmakers dared to bet almost all kinds of bets. Not only in sports but also in which city hosted the Olympic Games, the World Cup and so on. They also dared to bet on which country's regime changed. Of course, they only bet on some countries in the United States and Europe. Domestically, Jiang Hai did not know anything. For a competition like this, there would naturally be people who would place bets. However, the bets here were more for fun than to become rich. Therefore, the highest amount of bets that could be placed was only 500 euros. The odds were from 0, 1 to 3. That was to say, no matter how much they lost, they would only lose 500 euros. After deducting the principal, they would only lose 1,500 euros. They could afford to lose 3 purple tickets, not to mention that there was no chance of getting 3 times the odds. Basically, the odds were between 0, 7 to 1. 2. People who gambled were always the most profitable. They would not lose money. After 3 or 4 rounds, a waiter knocked on the door. After getting permission to enter, he came in and asked Jiang Hai if he wanted to personally participate in a round. Here he had to sign up the name list. Balian Mudun naturally didn't care about this and directly asked his bodyguard and driver to sign up. But just as he took the iPad from the other party's hand and saw the other party's information, the bodyguard's face changed instantly. What's wrong? Balian Mudun was a master of reading people's faces. When he saw his bodyguard, he couldn't help but ask, "This person? I can't beat him." Hearing his employer's words, the man named John Vic said helplessly, "You haven't even fought yet, and you already know that you can't beat him?" Hearing his words, Balian Mudun's face sank, then he walked over quickly and looked at the person who had already signed up. He couldn't help but frown when he saw this person. This was because this person was not Taro King's subordinate that he was familiar with. Instead, he was a South Korean called Park Tae-min. He was 187 meters tall, 190 pounds, and 31 years old this year. He had no impression of this person. What was going on? This man is the master of my underground boxing, and it is because of him that I ended my underground boxing career. So I'm sorry, Mr. Mudun, my duty is to protect your arrangements, not to fight with an enemy that I can't defeat. If you are dissatisfied with me, you can dismiss me at any time. Looking at Balian Mudun's face, John Vic also said helplessly on the other side. Balian Mudun seems to be a very good employer to him. Although he is not particularly generous, the money he should give will not be small. He has also played many games for Balian here. After every game, all the bonuses and money earned will be his, and he will even give him a sum of money alone. So when John Vic heard that he was going to fight, he did not have any dissatisfaction. Instead, he was a little eager to give it a try, but now it seems that the other party has studied his situation. "I'm sorry, Mr. Jiang, I've embarrassed myself in front of you. I'm going to deal with this matter now." Hearing that John Vic would rather be dismissed than fight, Balian Mudun knew that he had made up his mind. But even if he wants to be dismissed, he has to go back and talk about it. But now he has to go to Taro Mudun. Tonight's game is going to be cancelled. Although he will be laughed at, Jiang Hai's hundreds of millions of dollars business must not be delayed. He could see from Jiang Hai's eyes just now that Jiang Hai hates being implicated, and hates being made a fool of by others. Originally, he just wanted to show off his skills, but now he has to settle this matter so that Jiang Hai can rest assured. Wait a minute, the South Pole? But just as he was about to go out, Jiang Hai stood up and waved his hand gently. Then he walked to the information and looked at the person's situation. Originally, Jiang Hai was just like what he thought. He didn't want to cause trouble, but after learning that the other party was from the South Pole, he became interested. It must be known that the Wuxia people hated the Japanese the most, followed by the South Pole. If the other party also found a Frenchman or an Englishman or even an American, German, Soviet Russian, Indian, etc. to show off, then Jiang Hai would just let him deal with it. but the South Pole it should be quite fun to fight with them. Of course it's not that he wants to fight by himself. Even if he wants to do so, Azalina and the others will definitely not allow Jiang Hai to do so, because even if there is only a 0.0001% chance that the other party will hurt Jiang Hai, they will not allow it. But just now Jiang Hai saw that Knerson Peters was eager to have a try, so it doesn't matter if he let him play. Knerson Peters, are you interested in going down to play? Looking at Knerson Peters, Jiang Hai asked indifferently. Of course, no problem. Yes, whether in the eyes of Jiang Hai or in the eyes of Knerson Peters, going down to play the game is just playing. It is far from what he has played before. Okay, then tell me his name, Knerson Peters. Hearing Knerson Peters' words, Jiang Hai also chuckled, and then reported to the waiter next to him. Hearing what Jiang Hai said, the waiter immediately wrote it down. As for Knerson Peters, he gently moved his hands and feet. Although he had not played underground boxing for a while, he had not been idle. Usually he played with Harriman Fells and Bell Lester. Sometimes Jiang Hai would also come up to play. In the state of playing without killing, Jiang Hai was naturally the strongest, but he was also the second strongest. Of course, if it was a competition of marksmanship, then he was the weakest, but when it came to fighting he was still quite confident. Originally, his body was abnormally strong, plus eating beef and fish in the manner and absorbing a lot of aura. Now, Knerson Peters was an out-and-out humanoid behemoth. After confirming that Knerson Peters would participate in the game, the waiter here also left. After a while, he brought a set of sportswear which was prepared for Knerson Peters later. He could not let Knerson Peters wear a casual suit to play the game. After all, France was the fashion capital. They knew very well how much the suit on him was worth. Jiang Hai was very good to his subordinates, especially outside. It was inevitable that handmade suits were from luxury brands. This was also a reflection of strength. While Knerson Peters was changing, in another box far away, a Southern Caucasian had already changed and was looking at the information of his opponent. It's not John Vick, but it doesn't matter. No matter who it is, they can't stop me. Chapter 1032. At this time, there were a total of 7 people sitting in Pu Taimin's room. The person sitting in the main seat was naturally Pu Taimin, who was going to fight today. Park Taimin was 31 years old this year. He was of Korean descent in the United States. He had joined the United States Army in the early days and had almost become colleagues with Bell. They had entered the Triangle State, but unfortunately he was afraid of death on the battlefield and had escaped by himself. He had led their team to be completely wiped out and the mission had failed. After the mission had failed, the United States Army had been looking for him, and he had quietly fled to Europe. There, he started to fight in the underground with the foundation of Taekwondo that he had practiced since he was a child. However, if Wuxia's Kung Fu was 80% acting and 20% fighting, then South Korea's Taekwondo was 90% or even 100% acting. As the old saying goes, hands are 2 doors and you have to rely on your feet to beat people. Taekwondo took this saying to the extreme. Taekwondo had no fist techniques at all. Their 2 hands were just decorations. As for the leg techniques, to be honest, other than looking good, there were no special skills. There were no high leg sweeps, chain kicks in the air, super chop and so on. When fighting against amateurs it was very intimidating. It looked fierce and fierce. However, in the eyes of a real master, these movements were only flaws. When he had just arrived in Europe, he had been beaten up badly by the underground boxing. Later he pretended to be a Japanese and went to a dojo for Kyokushin karate. After learning Kyokushin karate there, he used this excuse to learn Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Relying on the physical foundation that he had trained in Taekwondo, his fighting power began to improve. Although Taekwondo did not have much fighting power, it still had the effect of strengthening the body. John Vick was someone he met after he learned Brazilian jiu-jitsu. John Vick was indeed his master and had taught him before. However, he had never taught him the real core of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Even so, John Vick had made a name for himself in the underground boxing world. When John Vick was at his peak, he came out. An unknown South Korean fighter defeated John Vick, who was at his peak. Not only did he make a lot of money, but he also made a name for himself. Later he switched to being a semi-professional. Now he had quite a reputation. In South Korea and Europe he had 4 dojos dedicated to teaching students. It was precisely because he had suffered a few losses at the hands of John Vick that this time, after Taro King learned of his situation, he found him and offered him a large sum of money to invite him over. For people like Taro King, money and face were more important than the latter. This person looks familiar and he seems to be very strong. Looking at Pu Taimin's indifferent look, the other people in the room also came over and looked at the information in his hand, then a female voice said with some doubts. At this time in Pu Taimin's room, there were a total of 7 people including him. 1 was his coach, 1 was his driver and 2 were his girlfriends. In addition to these 4 people there were 2 other people. They were none other than Han Jiaran and her husband Yan Jingxuan, who had some relationship with Jiang Hai. Looking at this information she felt that Knerson Peters was somewhat familiar. Hey, it doesn't matter. No matter how strong he is, how can he be stronger than Taimin? Don't joke around. Don't you know how strong Taimin is? Hearing her words, Yan Jingxuan on the other side also said with a smile, and at the same time he also flattered Pu Taimin. When Yan Jingxuan was in South Korea, he often played with some famous young masters, which could be regarded as emotional investment. Kickboxing was a very popular event in South Korea. There were many people who fought in the UFC there, and they were also considered stars. They often participated in some reality shows such as Kim Dong-shen, Choi Hong-won, Chiu Ching-xuan, and so on. Therefore these young masters often played with these kickboxing masters. As a master in the European underground boxing world, Pu Taimin naturally had a considerable status in South Korea, so Yan Jingxuan also had some friendship with him. This time when he came to France, he occasionally heard Pu Taimin mention that he had a dojo in France. Originally he wanted to go and see it, but he happened to be in France, so he invited them to come and watch the competition in the evening. After all, this celebrity couple was also quite famous in South Korea. It was understandable that Pu Taimin had a good relationship with them, but when he looked at Han Jiaran, his eyes were shining. In South Korea, the view of beauty was extremely different from that of China. In South Korea the highest goddess was Kim Taeshi, but her reputation in China was really not very big. Next were Han Jiaran and Sun Yixin. Although Song Huiqiao had many supporters because there were too many rumors about her private life, she gave the public a feeling of dislike. Quan Zhixin herself was a very introverted person, so these 2 actors who had a great reputation in China were not obvious in South Korea. On the contrary, they were not famous in China, but they were very famous in South Korea. Cough Taimin? Maybe he felt Pu Taimin's gaze. Yan Jingxuan suddenly regretted bringing his wife here. Originally he just wanted to show off his connections in front of Han Jiaran. He didn't want to send a sheep to the tiger's den. Oh brother Jingxuan, it's almost time. I have to go and prepare. Hearing Yan Jingxuan's words, Pu Taimin was too embarrassed to be too obvious, so he just smiled, then went downstairs to prepare. There is something wrong with your friend. After watching Pu Taimin leave, Han Jiaran glanced at Yan Jingxuan and whispered. Yan Jingxuan could only smile awkwardly because he also felt that this situation was not right. But now, even if they felt that something was wrong, they couldn't leave. They could only pray that he was just watching. Soon, the host on the ring announced that tonight's competition was over. Next was the time for the private fights. The first round was Pu Taimin against Knerson Peters. These private fights could also raise the stakes, but in order to avoid underground fighting, these private fights would reveal the person behind the other party. This way, if they lost, underground fighting was one thing but their face was another. There were not many big companies whose face was not worth tens of thousands of euros. Although it was a bet between Balian Mudun and Terrell King, Knerson Peters carried the name of Jiang Hai. Next, we will first introduce the fighter under Mr. Terrell King, from the legend of South Korea and Europe's underground fighting world, Pu Taimin. After confirming that there was no problem with both of them, the host also shouted with ambition to arouse the audience's emotions. Many of the spectators who came here were paying attention to black boxing. Although they couldn't say that Pu Taimin's name was well known, they still knew a thing or two about him. For a while, there were a lot of cheers and discussions coming over. Yeah, long live South Korea, Pu Taimin is the first. Under the attention of everyone, Pu Taimin also walked out with his own music. As soon as he walked out, the atmosphere of the audience on the field became even more uplifting. Jiang Hai, who was sitting on the balcony, looked at this person's movements and couldn't help but smile softly. This guy's performance was so stupid. Mr. Jiang, this time it's my fault. You really don't have to get involved in this mess. Looking at Jiang Hai's relish, Balian Mudun couldn't help but sigh. This time he had really exhausted all his tricks. Let's pretend that today's incident didn't happen. We'll talk about other things at the negotiating table tomorrow. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but smile. He was not the kind of person who always tried to be nice. Whether this person lost face, lost money, and even whether he would be killed had nothing to do with Jiang Hai. He just wanted Knerson Peters to slap South Korea's face, that was all. And now looking at South Korea's arrogant attitude, Jiang Hai felt that his decision was really right. After South Korea's cockiness on the stage for almost 5 minutes, it was Knerson Peters' turn to appear. However, compared to the South Stick, his entrance was much calmer. In fact, he was the only one who walked out calmly. The next contestant from the blue team is Mr. Jiang Hai's fighter, Conrad Peters. Looking at Knerson Peters walking over, the host here also looked a little weak. Although it seems that Knerson Peters is much bigger than Pu Taemin in this ring, there are many cases of big people being knocked down by small people. Because joint skills are allowed here, not simple boxing. Being bigger may not be of much use at this time. Seeing Knerson Peters walk into the ring, the whispers in the audience became louder. Everyone didn't know which side to bet on. Bet €500 for me, Knerson Peters? Looking at the indifferent Connorson, Jiang Hai said with a smile. Then I will also bet €500. In a sense, Jiang Hai is also standing up for himself. Naturally, Balian Mudun will not miss this opportunity to express goodwill, but Jiang Hai didn't care about his move. Okay, the bet is over. About 3 minutes later, the host received the message that it was almost time and was about to announce the start, but at this time, Jiang Hai in the second floor box suddenly stood up and shouted at the field. Connorson. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, everyone looked at Jiang Hai. They wanted to see what this person was going to say. Since you bear my name, then let's have a good fight here. Ignoring everyone's eyes, Jiang Hai looked at Knerson Peters standing there and said loudly. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, Knerson Peters also grinned and looked at Pu Taemin with only pity. Chapter 1033. The first rounds start. After the introduction of both sides, the referee stretched out his hand and said directly to the two men. After hearing the referee's words, Pu Taemin did not immediately come up to fist bump. Instead, he stood in place and did a very famous continuous kick in Taekwondo. The extremely fast speed and the handsome movements naturally caused many women to scream. Listening to these screams, Pu Taemin also smiled. 20 seconds is enough to deal with you. Looking at Knerson Peters, Pu Taemin said with an arrogant face. Hearing his words, Knerson Peters just looked at him calmly. He felt that this guy was sick. Under the referee's signal, the two men stepped forward and bumped fists. Because they were playing MMA, which was unrestricted fighting, the two men did not wear boxing gloves, but the UFC gloves that exposed the fingers. At the beginning of the game, Pu Taemin attacked first. His 2 feet were constantly rubbing on the ground, changing his position and circling around Knerson Peters. Knerson Peters just stood in place and looked at him indifferently, waiting to see what tricks he was going to play. Maybe he felt that he had tested enough. Pu Taemin stepped on his right foot without saying a word. In an instant, his body speed reached the limit and rushed toward Knerson Peters' lower body. If the small man fought the big man, there was a 90% chance that he would not be able to beat the opponent. What's more, Knerson Peters was more than 2 meters tall. It was really scary standing there. If he stood there and fought, no matter how high his feet were, he would not be able to hit the opponent. Therefore, when the small man and the big man competed or even fought, as long as they rolled together, they would have the advantage. An inch longer, an inch stronger, and an inch shorter, an inch more dangerous. This was not a joke. The reason why Pu Taemin was so famous in Europe was that he learned Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Kyokushin karate. His combat effectiveness on the ground was quite strong. When he rushed over, he would directly hit the opponent's abdomen in the next second. Then he would knock the man down and the ground would be his world. But Knerson Peters' combat experience was not worse than him. Although his brain was not very good, he was absolutely not careless when fighting. If it was in the black boxing arena where life and death was not a matter of life and death, he might have directly grabbed the opponent's head and kneed him. But here, attacking the opponent's head would be a loss, so he just stretched out his big hand and instantly pressed the man's shoulder. The huge force made Pu Taemin completely unable to move in an instant. Damn it! Feeling the huge force from Knerson Peters, Pu Taemin could not help but clench his teeth. He thought that Knerson Peters would be very strong. After all, he was big, but he did not expect this guy to be so strong. After being pressed down, since he could not attack head-on, he would attack from below. Pu Taemin thought of this and instantly slipped under his feet. He rolled directly and instantly lay on the ground. Then his 2 legs, one in front and one behind, clamped the bend of Knerson Peters' legs. This was also a basic skill in fighting. It could make a big man with a high center of gravity fall because of losing his center of gravity. But unfortunately, this also depended on the opponent's level. Knerson Peters was originally very strong. Now that he had nothing to do, he trained at home every day. In addition, he ate beef and fish with spiritual energy. His physical fitness had far exceeded that of ordinary people. It was not a problem to say that he was infinitely close to the limit of human beings. Of course, it was only in terms of strength. So although it was a joint technique, Knerson Peters's legs did not even bend. Looking at his movements, Knerson Peters could not help but bend down to grab his legs. Seeing Knerson Peters bend down, the man's eyes could not help but light up. Then he instantly supported his wrist and kicked Knerson Peters's chin. Although Taekwondo was not very effective in fighting, the strength of the legs was very strong. Moreover, for a sure kill opportunity like this, there was still some morality. So when he saw Knerson Peters bending down, Pu Taimin could not help but laugh in his heart. This time he would definitely win. He was already thinking about his next move. This kick hit Knerson Peters's chin, making him dizzy. Then he stood up with a carp flip, followed by a knee strike, and then rode on his body. His two hands kept hitting his opponent's head. Well, this was the end of the match. However, although he had thought it through well and had even thought about how to flirt with Hanja after the game, things were not as simple as he thought. Just as his foot was about to hit Knerson Peters' right hand, which had been idle all this time, suddenly reached out and grabbed his ankle in front of his surprised eyes. This is bad. Seeing Knerson Peters's action, Pu Taimin shouted in his heart, but he did not panic. Instead, he used his other foot to kick Knerson Peters's face in an instant, trying to pull his foot back. But unfortunately, Knerson Peters did not give him this opportunity. When he grabbed his ankle, Knerson Peters had already stood up abruptly, then swung it directly. Then, under the surprised and puzzled eyes of the audience and the referee, he directly swung his leg up and slammed it heavily into the ring in front of him. Bang! With a loud noise, Pu Taimin was directly smashed into the ring. Fortunately, the ring was hollow and it was just a piece of cloth, not a real concrete floor. Otherwise, this would be enough to make him half dead. But Knerson Peters did not stop there. He grabbed Pu Taimin's leg, and when Pu Taimin was powerless to resist and his whole body was sore, he smashed Pu Taimin 7 times, just like how the Hulk smashed Loki in Avengers. He grabbed Pu Taimin's leg and smashed him to the ground. Perhaps after 7 smashes, he remembered the rules and casually threw Pu Taimin to the side. But at this time, Pu Taimin had already fainted and lost consciousness. His eyes were white, his mouth was crooked, and his body was like noodles. At least a few bones were broken. If it were not for his chest that was still moving up and down slightly, it could be concluded that he was dead. When the referee saw this situation, he reacted immediately and immediately called the medical staff who had been prepared for a long time. What else is there to say? Send him to the hospital immediately. Looking at those people who were busy there, Knerson Peters couldn't help but smile disdainfully. Can't even withstand a single blow. Saying the words that Jiang Hai had taught him, Knerson Peters slowly walked to the side of the field, then opened the door and went out. He did not return to the locker room, but went straight to the stairs on the 2nd floor. Looking at Knerson Peters who walked over, the audience was silent. Everyone looked at him with only horror in their eyes. Even Terrell Jean in the box next to Jiang Hai's and Balian Mudun, who wanted to discuss business with Jiang Hai, were so scared that they couldn't close their mouths. As for Mudun's bodyguard and driver, he looked at Knerson Peters with 30% vigilance, 20% horror, and 50% fear. He didn't know how many rounds he could last in the hands of this big guy. But judging from the current situation, he shouldn't be able to hold on for more than a minute. At this time in Park Taemin's room, seeing that he was beaten to the point that even his mother couldn't recognize him, his coach, driver, and his 2 girlfriends quickly fled. As for Han Jiaran and Yen Jingxuan, after looking at each other, they also left quietly. Just now they felt that Park Taemin was up to no good. If they didn't leave now, when would they? Good job. Jiang Hai didn't know about these things and he wasn't clear about it. Looking at Knerson Peters who was walking back, Jiang Hai said to him with a smile. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Knerson Peters also smiled honestly. For him he was Jiang Hai's boxing glove. He would beat whoever Jiang Hai asked him to. He picked up his clothes next to him and went to the bathroom to change again. Then he stood behind Jiang Hai just like before. But at this time Balian Mudun and the others had to pay more attention to him than to Jiang Hai. Mr. Jiang, this warrior, where did you hire him? Looking at Knerson Peters, Balian Mudun thought for a moment and asked. If he also had such a warrior, his personal safety wouldn't be a problem. If he brought him to such a fighting arena in the future, TSK, how glorious would that be? So after hesitating for a moment he still asked, "Oh, he wasn't hired, he's my family?" Hearing Balian Mudun's words, Jiang Hai smiled. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Balian Mudun also nodded indifferently. He understood what Jiang Hai meant. Don't even think about hiring him, and the most important thing is, how much money does Jiang Hai have? He knows very well. So there's no need to say anything like a price. When the time comes, Jiang Hai will slap him in the face and it will be a resounding slap. After giving up on this thought, Balian Mudun continued to talk with Jiang Hai. He acted as if nothing happened just now, so he had to admit that this guy is a very good businessman. After the two chatted together for a while, they left here. As for the later program, they naturally didn't need to. Looking at the two people around Jiang Hai who were qualified to be celebrities, Balian Mudun didn't want to leave a bad impression on his wife. So after the two left here, they parted ways. Jiang Hai and the others returned directly to the hotel. They still have to continue the negotiation tomorrow. Chapter 1034. Jiang Hai's character, how should one describe it? Everyone should have some understanding of him, and he had been afraid of his own character more than once. This guy was cunning, lazy, and greedy. His only strength might be that he was not slippery. He was more serious about everything and he would not fool others. He had poor self-control. When facing beautiful women, although he would not be a pervert, nor would he be despised by others as long as beautiful women pushed him, the success rate was still quite high. Moreover, when facing his own women he did not know how to reject them. Of course, this was only limited to the women around him. As for those outsiders, they only wanted money and Jiang Hai would not care about them. Jiang Hai really had many shortcomings. He was greedy, lecherous, gluttonous, lazy, unsympathetic, disunited, and would not work hard for the rise of the nation and the country. It could be said that people who were on the moral high ground would feel that Jiang Hai was problematic, and no matter how they looked at him, they would not find him pleasing to the eye. However, Jiang Hai was like this and he did not change his mind after hearing their words. Moreover, he also had a problem, and that was, he did not have a passion for anything. In the past he wanted to raise chickens, but now the chickens were basically raised by Daliana and Marian, and by the way the wyverns were also raised by them. When he wanted to grow vegetables, the vegetables were all taken care of by Qijia and the others, including rice. After the initial stage was done, he did not care about it anymore. Every day Qijia and the others were patrolling. He did not help with raising cows, catching fish, or playing. In the past he wanted to play basketball, so he specially built a warehouse to be used as a basketball court, but now he did not need it. It could be said that Jiang Hai's patience was extremely poor, and his character was very easy to give up, but God was so blind. The Dragon Ball that could change everyone's fate was in his hands, and no one could do anything about it. If it was in the hands of someone who loved the country, maybe it would be dissected and studied. Of course, Jiang Hai was just imagining things. He was now lying on a deck chair next to the swimming pool on the top floor of the hotel, calmly basking in the sun, drinking juice and playing with his phone. Yes, he had no interest in negotiations. After 2 days of negotiations, Jiang Hai's excitement had worn off. The next night he specially asked Zheng Jin to send 2 people over to take over the negotiations. He was a little tired. After stating his bottom line on the 3rd day, he no longer cared about anything. If it were someone else, they might go to France to play when they had nothing to do, but Jiang Hai wasn't interested. He had already been to the landmark buildings in France and there was nothing new about it. Therefore he was prepared to force himself to return to the state he was in when he was in the manor. Just like now, he was sunbathing and playing here. Although the spiritual energy here was far worse than the one in the manor, it was still good to bask in the sun occasionally. Just as Jiang Hai was happily basking in the sun, 2 figures came over from a distance. Looking at the 2 figures, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be stunned. They hadn't left yet. Yes, the 2 people were none other than Han Jiaran and Yan Jingxuan. Jiang Hai didn't see them yesterday, so he thought they had left. Now, it seemed that they weren't ready to go back so soon. Thinking about it, although they weren't as rich as him, they were still famous actors in South Korea. Their income wasn't low, so it wouldn't be a problem for them to play in France for a while. When Jiang Hai was looking at them, they also saw Jiang Hai. Yan Jingxuan couldn't help but excitedly wave at Jiang Hai. Although Han Jiaran didn't mention anything about Jiang Hai, he had roughly inquired about him these days. He knew that the man who helped them solve the housing problem was a rich man, a very rich man. The status of South Korean artists was actually not very high, at least compared with businessmen and so on. It was indeed a little worse. Now that he had the opportunity to meet Jiang Hai, Yen Jingxuan walked over with a smile after seeing Jiang Hai. "Hello, Mr. Jiang, are you basking in the sun here?" Looking at Jiang Hai, Yen Jingxuan said with a smile. "Oh, hello, you also came to bask in the sun?" Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also raised his head and said with a smile. "Yes, I'm a little tired from walking these 2 days. Today I'm going to have a good rest in the hotel. What is Mr. Jiang doing?" Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Yen Jingxuan said with a smile. "Oh, I'm playing with WeChat." Jiang Hai said while showing this thing a little. "It's a social network. I'm not very good at this. Usually it's my manager who does it." Although he doesn't know what WeChat is, South Korea also has a similar thing called KT, but Yen Jingxuan himself doesn't play with these things. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai could only laugh, then ignored him and continued to play with his mobile phone. Seeing that he killed the conversation, Yen Jingxuan was also a little embarrassed, but fortunately he quickly recovered. After lying here for a while, some passing foreign girls were about to steal his soul away. After saying something to the Korean woman next to him, he plunged into the water and went to find the foreign girl who had just flirted with him. "It seems that your husband is still not very honest." Looking at Yen Jingxuan, who quickly hid in the water and played with some foreign girls, Jiang Hai put the phone aside and said calmly. Although Jiang Hai didn't look at her, Han Jiaran also knew that this bastard was talking to her. "This is our family matter, it has nothing to do with you." Hearing what Jiang Hai said, she bit her lip. Although she has always wanted to avoid Jiang Hai, sometimes fate is so bullshit. She always wants to avoid him, but she always inadvertently meets him. TSK, well, let's not talk about him. "I haven't seen you for so long, did you miss me?" Turning his head to look at the Korean woman, Jiang Hai said with a smile. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the Korean woman over there was about to go crazy. "This guy is too shameless. What do you mean by that?" Not daring to look at Jiang Hai, the Korean woman looked straight ahead and said to Jiang Hai, who was across the recliner. "It's the literal meaning." Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also teased her. If Jiang Hai has made any progress over the years, it must be that his level of flirting with girls is in a straight line. After all, real knowledge comes from practice. His practical experience is quite rich. He is not the person who was forcefully pushed by Aphrodite and didn't know what to do. Bastard. Snorting at Jiang Hai, Han Jiaran really couldn't stay here any longer. She picked up her towel and was about to leave. Looking at her back, Jiang Hai thought for a moment and left behind her. As for Yen Jingxuan, he was still having fun in the water. Following Jiang Hai walked into the hotel, but just as she took the elevator, Jiang Hai also walked in. Seeing Jiang Hai coming in, she couldn't resist. Just when she wanted to press the button for her floor, Jiang Hai grabbed her hand, and then Jiang Hai pressed the elevator for his floor. You, what are you doing?" Seeing that Jiang Hai contacted her and didn't let her press the elevator button, the Korean woman panicked a little. She couldn't help but struggle a little, trying to shake off Jiang Hai's hand. "Don't waste your energy. There are surveillance cameras here. If you keep making trouble and bring the security guards here, you and I won't be able to cover it." Hearing Jiang Hai's understatement, the Korean man's blood almost went cold by half. You beast, didn't you say you would keep it a secret?" Hearing what Jiang Hai said, she finally stopped struggling, but she still gritted her teeth and said. After hearing her words, Jiang Hai smiled. "Yeah, I didn't tell your husband and others. Don't worry, my mouth is very tight." Hearing what she said, Jiang Hai also smiled and then said to her. He didn't know why, but this woman always gave Jiang Hai a feeling of wanting to bully her. As for whether her face was fake or not, it had nothing to do with Jiang Hai. Anyway, Jiang Hai couldn't take her back, right? "You shameless." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the Korean woman said angrily, but just after she finished speaking, Jiang Hai turned back and kissed her on the mouth. When the two lips met, Jiang Hai also began to attack. After a long time, when she recovered from that feeling, they had already arrived at Jiang Hai's floor. Jiang Hai didn't say anything, he directly carried her in his arms and walked into his suite. After entering the suite, the two didn't say much. "Since it has already come to this, then let's start. Normal, back, standing, sky train? I don't understand what you are talking about." An hour later, the Korean woman was lying in front of Jiang Hai's indescribable existence. "Why is there no progress? Didn't you train? Where can I train? Do you want me to train with others?" Staring at Jiang Hai, the Korean woman said very unhappily. No, but didn't your husband do this with you? Hearing the Korean woman's words, Jiang Hai was really embarrassed. With that person, how is it possible? Hearing Jiang Hai talk about this topic, the Korean woman's face suddenly turned red and she couldn't help but say with some embarrassment. Hearing what she said, Jiang Hai couldn't help but shake his head. Such beautiful lips, I can't even do it 10 times a day, how can he endure it? Looking at the Korean woman, Jiang Hai said with a smile, then felt a little pain. If you talk nonsense again, I'm leaving. Glaring at Jiang Hai, the Korean woman said with shame and anger. Good, good, good. You are the best. If you need anything in the future, remember to call me. A day as husband and wife means endless grace. No matter what, I can help you once. Looking at her appearance, Jiang Hai said in a rare serious tone. Chapter 1035. Really? Hearing what Jiang Hai said, Corin couldn't help but raise her head in surprise. She knew that Jiang Hai would never like her. Of course she wouldn't like Jiang Hai either. They are together, in fact, more for each other's needs. She didn't intend to ask Jiang Hai for anything, but now Jiang Hai said that he could help her once in the future. She was a little surprised. She knew how powerful Jiang Hai was. If such a man said that he could help her once, then he could probably solve anything in the country. Thinking of this, she suddenly felt that she didn't suffer a loss. Not only did she get to enjoy the powerful existence of Jiang Hai, but she also got a promise. Thinking of this, she vomited even harder. Ha, not bad, do you want to do it again? Looking at her, Jiang Hai asked with a smile. Yes, but it has to be fast, that person may be aware of it soon. Hearing Jiang Hai's suggestion, Corin hesitated and nodded. Sometimes it's really hard to tell who is taking advantage of who, isn't it? Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also directly picked up his gun and the battle began again. About 40 minutes later, Yan Jingxuan, who was having a good time, finally found that his wife was gone, Jiang Hai was also gone, and no one answered his phone, so he returned to his room with a suspicious attitude. As a result, after coming back, he found that his wife was sitting on the sofa and watching TV with her legs crossed. Looking at the half-eaten potato chips next to her, it was obvious that she had been back for a while. Seeing this scene, Yan Jingxuan was relieved. When did you come back? Why didn't you tell me? I called your cell phone but no one answered. While preparing to walk to the bathroom, Yan Jingxuan said to her, but his eyes were looking at her, waiting for Corin's answer. What did I say to you? I was afraid to disturb your flirting mood with the little girl. The phone ran out of battery in the bag. She rolled her eyes at Yan Jingxuan and said indifferently. Hearing her words, Yan Jingxuan smiled awkwardly. It was indeed difficult to accept. Then he walked into the bathroom to take a shower. After he entered the bathroom, Han Jiaran heaved a sigh of relief. Looking at the 71% battery on her phone, she couldn't help but curl her lips and continue eating potato chips. This small episode was really just a small episode. In the evening, Jiang Hai received news that the negotiations were almost done. Balian Mudun was also very persistent. The price could be raised to 20%, or even 21%. However, he not only wanted Europe but also the special rights in the Middle East. However, those people were not sure about this idea, so they still talked to Jiang Hai in the evening. Jiang Hai was already a little bored here, so he waved his hand. So be it. The Middle East was given to him. Anyway, Du Feimin didn't know that Jiang Hai produced red wine here. After this idea was made, they could sign the contract tomorrow. Of course, before that, they still had to fight for the profits they should get. 1% of the price was also a small amount of money. According to Jiang Hai's $800 per bottle, 1% was $8 per bottle. If he wanted 10,000 bottles, it would be $80,000 and 50,000 bottles would be $400,000. How could he earn this money? Moreover, if this brand became famous, Jiang Hai's $2,000 per bottle would be $20. 50,000 bottles would be $1 million, 100,000 bottles would be $2 million, and 1 million bottles would be $20 million. Although he didn't care about this small amount of money, well, look at his arrogance. He couldn't just give it to the other party for free, right? After confirming the policy, the person in charge of the negotiation went back to his suite to sleep. Dulles Gerard breathed a sigh of relief. He could once again generate income for the manor. He could also look forward to this year's income. Jiang Hai continued to sleep with Azalina and Wallace Shelley in his arms. Wallace Shelley's two indescribable existences were quite gorgeous and extraordinarily large. Jiang Hai's hands were not small. He could easily catch a basketball with one hand, but he couldn't catch her with one hand. Both hands couldn't completely wrap around her. Coupled with her white skin, deep 5 points of view and golden hair, she was quite attractive. Jiang Hai couldn't put her down. Most importantly, she was very open. As long as Jiang Hai said something, as long as Jiang Hai wanted it, she would do it. Therefore, she was also one of Jiang Hai's favorite people in the manor besides Chiya and Ai Xiaoxi. Although he fought with the Hanjia people twice during the day, at night, Jiang Hai was always energetic when facing Azalina and Wallace Shelley. Naturally, there was another battle at night. After the battle, Jiang Hai also fell asleep with them in his arms. But just as he fell asleep, a burst of urgent ringtone sounded. When he picked it up, Jiang Hai found that the person who called was not someone else but Qi Li. Although he was a little confused because they just finished the phone call today just when they were negotiating the contract, why did she call again now? Hello Qi Li, what's the matter? After picking up the phone, Jiang Hai asked Qi Li on the other side of the phone. Jiang, my mother is in the hospital. Jiang Hai's voice just fell. Qi Li on the other side had already said with a trace of sobbing. Wait, slow down. What's the situation? How did she get hospitalized? Hearing Qi Li's sobbing words, Jiang Hai immediately asked. At this time, Du Ning, who had been staying beside Qi Li, snatched the phone. Zheng Xiua called Sister Qi just now and told her that the old lady suddenly fainted. She couldn't explain it clearly, so Sister Qi asked her to call 120. Just now, the ambulance arrived and said that the old lady might have an acute heart attack. Now, she has been sent to the hospital for emergency treatment. The specific situation is still unclear. We have already booked the plane tickets and will set off immediately. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Du Ning quickly told what had happened. Okay, I am relieved that you are with Qi Li. I will call Qi Jia and Qi Ya immediately and arrange for them to return to Wuxia immediately. I am now in France. I will call the crew members immediately and return to Bing City. Hearing Du Ning's words, Jiang Hai had never been so relieved to leave Du Ning with Qi Li. At this time they were still quite reliable. After comforting Du Ning for a while, Jiang Hai had already gotten up. Azalina and Wallace Shelley had already gotten up when they heard Jiang Hai's voice on the phone. While putting on their clothes, they called the crew members. Although it was in the middle of the night, it was Jiang Hai's plane. Jiang Hai directly gave the crew 3 times the bonus, so the crew members all got up. They lived near the airport and began to repair the plane after they arrived. After putting on his clothes, Jiang Hai found Dulles Gerard and authorized him to be in charge of tomorrow's negotiations. He directly told him that he would directly throw out the contract for tomorrow's negotiations. The Middle East and Europe could be given to him with a 20% discount. If it was acceptable, he would sign the contract. If not, it would be cancelled directly. After learning that Jiang Hai had something to do, Dulles Gerard also nodded. He knew Jiang Hai's temper and character. He valued his family very much. Not to mention wine, even if it was beef or fish, he would give them up. This was his character. This was also the reason why so many people were loyal to him. While rushing to the airport, Jiang Hai also woke up Qi Jia and Qi Ya. At the same time, he booked the earliest flight to the capital for them. Because Jiang Hai was not there, he deliberately transferred Biliak back from the Tinglong company to ensure the safety of the girls. One of them would drive the 2 sisters to New York. After arranging everything here, Jiang Hai immediately called Qi Li. Although he and Qi Li had been quarreling, Jiang Hai still respected Qi Li's mother very much. After all, she was also his mother-in-law and she helped him when he needed help the most. Now that her parents had passed away, it could be said that she was also his family, so he was also very anxious. At this time, Qi Li's mood had calmed down a little. Du Ning drove the car and the 2 were now rushing to the airport. Qi Li was also a little calmer now. When Jiang Hai went to arrange things, she also called the hospital. At this time, her mother had been pushed into the operating room, and it was preliminarily confirmed that she had an acute heart attack. Perhaps because the Qi family was originally quite rich and well-connected, there were no accidents. The doctors were quite ethical. When the ambulance came, they immediately performed the surgery and waited for the family to come back. At about 3 o'clock in the morning in France, Jiang Hai, Azalina, and Wallace Shelley got on the plane to Bing City. Because this was Jiang Hai's own plane, there was no need to make a detour in the capital. As for Qi Jia and Qi Ya, they had to make a detour in the capital. They really didn't expect that such a thing would happen inexplicably. It was really a misfortune for their family. The next morning, before Yan Jingxuan got up, Han Jiaren hesitated for a moment and decided to go to Jiang Hai. Of course, she didn't go to see him. She just wanted to come and see him. But when she arrived at Jiang Hai's room, she found that he was gone. Only some housekeepers were there cleaning up the room. Hey, has the person who lives here left? Looking at the spotless room, Han Jiaran asked with some doubts. Oh, phew. Mr. Zhang's family suddenly had an accident, so he left first. What's the matter? At this time, Dulles Gerard and Knerson Peters in the next suite came out. Looking at Han Jiaran, Dulles Gerard said with a smile. He still had some impression of this South Korean. Oh no, nothing. Then I'll leave first. Hearing that Jiang Hai had left, Han Jiaran didn't know why she suddenly felt a little empty in her heart. Fortunately, she was an actress. After quickly hiding it, she hurried downstairs. Chapter 1036. Of course, Jiang Hai did not know what happened in France at this time. For him, if he knew that Han Jia had come to find him, he would not feel lucky. Instead, he would feel a little worried. What a joke. He did not intend to have a close relationship with this South Korean. So be it. However, it was impossible for him to bring her home. It was impossible for him to risk such universal condemnation. But sometimes, not knowing anything was also a kind of happiness. Phew, here we are. Wrapping his coat, Jiang Hai glanced at the covered bridge in front of him, and then walked into the Taiping International Airport in Bingqing with Azalina and Wallace Shelley in the morning sun. Although there was a 6-hour time difference between Paris and the United States, the flight time was only 2 hours apart. It took about 13 hours to fly from the capital to the United States, and 11 hours to fly from the capital to Paris. Jiang Hai's private jet could control the speed of the flight, but it still took him 10 hours to fly. Jiang Hai got on the plane at 3 o'clock in the morning in France. The imperial capital was 7 hours faster than Paris. That is to say, when they took off, it was already 10 o'clock in the morning in China. After flying for more than 10 hours when they landed, it was already 9 o'clock in the evening, which was 21 o'clock. Although Bing City was called Little Paris in the east, the weather here was indeed worse than Paris. Of course, the highest temperature every day was about the same. It was the end of April, and the temperature was almost 20 degrees during the day. But at night, it was much colder in Bing City than in Paris, which was 10 degrees. When Jiang Hai got off the plane and walked out of the airport, he saw Du Ning, who came to pick them up at the airport parking lot. When they were on the plane, Jiang Hai had received the news that Qi Li's mother had been rescued, but the doctor also said that the situation was not very good. She needed a stent. Otherwise, the next time she fell ill, no one knew what would happen. However, as long as they could be saved, it was a good thing that nothing happened to them immediately. That was why Jiang Hai and the others didn't have to be so anxious. How's the situation? Sitting in Du Ning's Rolls-Royce, Jiang Hai asked her. She's fine. The old lady has already woken up. She knows people, but her mental state is normal. She's weak. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, this might be the best answer. If their mental state was particularly good, then it might be troublesome. As the old saying goes, the final radiance of the setting sun. Look at those who had been sick for a long time. If one day they suddenly became energetic, could walk and could eat and drink, then it meant that the situation was bad. At this time, it was useless to go to the hospital because no symptoms could be detected. However, it was estimated that it would be over in a few days. It was difficult to explain with science, but Jiang Hai had seen it with his own eyes. Now that he knew that the old lady was still alive, Jiang Hai was relieved, but after being relieved, his brows also wrinkled. The things in Jiang Hai's manner all have spiritual energy. Not to say that after eating it, it can cure all diseases, but it can also strengthen the body. Since Jiang Hai began to raise cattle and fish, not to mention Jiang Hai who has the Dragon Ball, even his employees as well as those girls didn't even catch a cold. All of them were quite healthy. Qi Jia often joked that she was useless as a doctor. Qi Li was a very filial daughter. In the beginning, before Jiang Hai and her got back together, she would also take back the beef she got from Jiang Hai to her mother to eat. Later, when Jiang Hai wanted to get closer to her, he couldn't be stingy with the food, not to mention how much could his mother-in-law and Jing Shuai eat. So he would send them once every 10 days to half a month. If they ate Jiang Hai's beef and fish, they would have a heart attack. To be honest, he didn't understand. Could it be that beef and fish are useless in Wuxia? Impossible. I went to Qi Li's restaurant to eat. Although the spiritual energy dissipated a little, there was still spiritual energy. What's going on? Sitting in the back seat, Jiang Hai touched his chin and thought. He really couldn't understand it. Unknowingly, the car had already driven to the hospital parking lot. After Jiang Hai and the others got out of the car, they walked into an intensive care unit. When they walked in, they found that Qi Li's mother had just fallen asleep. Qi Li was sitting beside her at this time, touching her hand and looking at her face. Feeling that someone came in, Qi Li also raised her head. When she saw that it was Jiang Hai, her eyes couldn't help but flash a trace of tears. "It's okay, I'm here. How is our mother?" Looking at Qi Li's eyes, Jiang Hai also walked over and pressed his big hand on her head, then looked at his mother-in-law lying in front of him and asked Qi Li. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Li also whispered in Jiang Hai's ear. Fortunately, the doctor said that it was a myocardial infarction. If it had been 10 minutes later, it might have been dangerous. Now that he has been given medicine to dredge the blood vessels, he woke up for a while and was a little confused, then he fell asleep again. Hearing what Qi Li said, Jiang Hai also looked at his mother-in-law in front of him. He looked left and right, but he didn't feel a trace of spiritual qi in her body. However, the old lady's complexion was still quite good when she went back during the new year. How could it be possible that Qi Li's mother had become like this in just a few months? It should be known that Qi Li's mother was only in her 50s this year. Moreover, she had never suffered any hardships in her life. She had been living a good life since she was in her 30s. Usually she paid attention to her health. Jiang Hai was a little puzzled that he would have a heart attack in such a situation, so he had to ask clearly. "Du Ning, take care of my mother-in-law first. Qi Li, come out for a while." Glancing at Qi Li, Jiang Hai said to Du Ning, then walked out first. The old lady was fine now, which was the most important thing, but the reason still had to be investigated. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Li also let go of her mother's hand and followed Jiang Hai to the corridor. When they turned to a place where there was no one, Jiang Hai looked at Qi Li. "I suspect that our mother may have been tricked by someone else." After thinking about it, Jiang Hai said directly. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Li's eyes were instantly stunned. "Are you kidding me? Someone dares to trick my mother? This is courting death. Are you sure?" Looking at Jiang Hai, Qi Li said with killing intent. Jiang Hai also nodded gently. "The beef and fish in my manor have a special substance in them. Not only can it make the fish and beef delicious, but most importantly, it can also make people's health better and better. I will send those ingredients to our mother every 10 days or half a month. Logically speaking, she eats those things every day. Let alone having a heart attack, it is impossible for her to have a cold or fever. But after I came here today, our mother's face was a little dark. She probably didn't eat my beef and fish after the new year." Looking at Qi Li, Jiang Hai said with a serious face. He and Qi Li have that kind of relationship and they are also partners. She naturally noticed that Jiang Hai's beef and fish are a little different. She also eats them every day. Indeed, she doesn't have any disease, and even if she is tired the day before after eating and sleeping, she will be 100 times more energetic the next day. She originally thought that this might be the power of love. But now it seems that this should be the power of beef and fish. Jiang Hai's food has such a special effect. She was just guessing and was not sure. Now she is sure, but she will not ask Jiang Hai how to do it. "Are you suspecting that there is a mole? My mother's things are generally taken care of by Xiao. If Xiao Yi was raised by our family, she will not do anything bad to us." Hearing Jiang Hai's resolute words, Qi Li said with some hesitation. "I'm not saying that it must be her. Let's wait and see. I'm just telling you about the situation. As for the specifics, we have to investigate again." Hearing Qi Li's words, Jiang Hai sighed. If this matter is really done by Jing Xiuyi, Qi Li and the others will be quite sad. After all, raising an ingrate is quite a headache. "By the way, is your red wine contract going well?" After talking about the old lady, Qi Li also wanted to change her mind, so she asked Jiang Hai about his red wine business. "Who knows? I asked Dulles Gerard to talk about it. It's only about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon in Paris. There shouldn't be a definite answer yet. There should be a letter in 2 or 3 hours." Hearing Qi Li's words, Jiang Hai shook his head and said. He really didn't know how the negotiations in Paris were going, but thinking about it, with Dulles Gerard, he won't let him suffer. Besides, he has already explained where his bottom line is. "Alas, I really can't tell that you have left me further and further behind in the past 2 or 3 years. I really regret it a little. If I had given up when I married you and let you help me in the company, would the cheese enterprise be bigger now and we would be more intimate?" Looking at Jiang Hai, Qi Li took a deep breath. She was too young and impetuous at the beginning. If she had accepted her fate earlier, she didn't know if there would have been a better result. After Jiang Hai heard her words, he also chuckled and didn't say anything, because he knew his own situation. The reason why he had such achievements now was inseparable from his possession of the Dragon Balls. If Chi really accepted him at the beginning, would he still have the Dragon Balls? No one knows because every timeline is different. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.